Hello and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the continuation of the Alpha Touring Challenge Season 6 as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, and that is known as iRacing. And today we mark round 7 of 13 as the story rages on in the quest to be the best of the touring car racing class machines, whether it be in the Honda Civic Type R, the Hyundai Elantra, the Hyundai Veloster, or alternatively the Audi RS3. Our drivers are gunning for the very best across our two classes, with the Alphas or the equivalent Pros, and then the Deltas or the Pro-Ams. But one thing is for certain, that here today in Austria, it is going to be a key turning point for the simple reason drop scores are now starting to come into effect after tonight, and the stakes could not be higher. But as we get ready to go racing once again, let's take you through our scheduled times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinated Time, UTC. They are as follows. It will be in just under 14 minutes time that we go into qualifying, 15 minutes of qualifying action where all of our drivers will take to the circuit in anger and look to set their best possible times to put themselves as high up the grid, because of course whilst overtaking is going to be highly common here at the Austrian circuit, if you can be up front, then that may just give you the opportunity to stay clear of the mid-pack and therefore the kerfuffles in the midst of many a driver. Indeed, if you can break away as an isolated group of drivers at the very front, then you're likely to score very big, if not bring home the ultimate win. But after qualifying, we'll head straight into our Alpha Challenge race, or what will be more colloquially known as the feature race, and that'll be 60 minutes in duration with only one race on the schedule today, and that'll be at 8 o'clock this evening. And to do a little bit of housekeeping, of course, we should point out that this is a post-round broadcast for your viewing pleasure. So the idea is that the racing itself occurred as of earlier this week. The racing occurred on, and I have to correct myself here if I am wrong, on what was at the time Monday the 9th of January, but still what you're seeing in the background will be completely unfiltered, and I as your host and commentator do not know what happens in the practice, qualifying, or indeed in the race session, so it's completely raw and new to me, and it'll be completely raw and new in terms of the experience you get to you guys and girls tuning in at home via our two media platforms for viewing pleasure, whether it be on the Twitch channel, alternatively on the YouTube channel. You'll be getting the same experience. Indeed, we can see both of the chats there. So therefore, if you are one of the drivers who participate in this race, we do kindly ask that you do not give away what happens at any point, for the simple reason we don't want any spoilers. And as we get ready to go, we said we're on two media platforms. Well, we are on YouTube firstly. If you go to youtube.com and search for Paul Walsh or TX11TX, you can tune in there. Or secondly, if you're more of a Twitch inclined user, you can go to twitch.tv/TX141 and tune in on Twitch. Now, who is TX141 or Paul Walsh? Well, that is I, your host and commentator. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And I'll be bringing you all of your racing action tonight, and indeed for the remainder of the season that continues to surprise us with every corner and lap turned. But as our drivers are absolutely itching to go, let's take you through the season schedule as it continues its way on through. And well, now as we make our way into the halfway point effectively of the calendar, with the transition over from Donington Park last time out in the United Kingdom to the Red Bull Ring, let's reflect on our opening 6 rounds. We started off all the way back on the 7th of November at Belle Isle in Detroit, the United States of America, and there in our common opening round, of course, no Alpha Touring Challenge season would be complete without opening in Detroit with the Alpha Challenge round. We saw plenty of action on the streets, and that action carried all the way from Detroit over to Laguna Seca in our second round, our first sprint race round of the season in the state of California, where our drivers took on the Monterey County circuit. Indeed, sparks flew there as well, albeit of a different kind, with the circuit being very narrow, much like the Belle Isle circuit, but the difference being the sand would catch many a driver if they went deep instead of the walls. After that, we made our way across the Pacific Ocean for round number 3 on the 21st of November, and that was at Fuji Speedway. And in Japan, the first of 2 circuits in Japan that we featured in this calendar, we saw our drivers absolutely fly high on the start-finish straight and roar their way all the way round the corners and bring it all through. Indeed, slipstream was a key factor in who was able to pull off the best possible results. Then we took a brief break before returning on the 12th of December in respect to Thanksgiving, and on the 12th of December we continued the story of Japan by heading to the Suzuka circuit. There, of course, in our second sprint race round of the calendar, we saw many a battle over the course of the 3 races, and whereas in the 2 sprint heats or the sprint feature, there were surprises in store, and a number of drivers lost out on some major points, whether it be in the Alpha or the Delta classes. And then, of course, we went for round number 5 to the Hungaroring just before Christmas in Hungary, and there we saw that track position was absolutely key, and those drivers who did not qualify well really had a struggle in battling their way up through the order, and our top 3 ran off into the distance very quickly. Then we had the Christmas break, returned last time out, of course, for Donington Park in the United Kingdom, and there in our third sprint race round of the season, Will Donington Park serves us a treat with the Grand Prix course never failing to impress with regards to the racing action, and whereas in the 2 sprint heats or the sprint feature, we saw battles which may just define the championship in the Alpha class in particular, and those battles between the likes of Jason Landry, Micah Hendricks and also James Carr. And as the road rages on here, we now head to the Red Bull Ring, and well, what a circuit we have got in store. But after today, on the 16th of January, we'll be making our way to the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, and the German circuit is definitely going to be a different one. Normally our drivers not seeing this circuit for a long time in their iRacing history. The last time it was featured, of course, was many seasons ago in the Alpha Touring Challenge, but we'll be running the full Nürburgring Grand Prix World Endurance circuit, and we'll see our drivers take on it with aplomb, and they're absolutely going to love it. I can already hear it down the paddock. They're absolutely anticipating this one in Austria, but next week in Germany, they're going to love that even more, as if they're not going to love it in every race already. And of course, that'll be a sprint race round. And then after that, we're making our way to the South American continent, particularly Brazil, and the Interlagos circuit on the 23rd of January in our Alpha Challenge round there. And in the feature race at a circuit which is known for drama, indeed championship drama, the later it is in a season calendar. And well, Interlagos is definitely going to be one to watch out for in terms of plenty of battling opportunities. And also it'll be an ultimate test of driver stamina with the elevation changes there. And then we'll be making our way over to Norway for our final sprint race round of the season in round number 10. And that'll be at the Rudskogen Motor Centre circuit in the Norwegian forestry, and then we'll see our drivers charge through the countryside. And the key thing about Rudskogen, much like the Hungaroring all the way back in round number 5, it is a circuit where you need to qualify well. Don't qualify well, and then you're going to have to fight your way around the circuit where there's very little room to overtake unless you push the door wide open. And then we'll have 2 Alpha Challenge rounds back to back on the 6th of February at Mid-Ohio, and then in round number 12, the penultimate round on the 13th of February, will be Road Atlanta, a back-to-back doubleheader back in the United States of America, and then we bring it all to a close in the season finale with the Bathurst Special. That'll be on the 20th of February down under in Australia, and there, well, it'll be one for our drivers not to miss, because there'll be big points on hand, and indeed it could be the very set of points that turns the tide in the championship. But as we come from our schedule to look to our circuit for today, it is none other than the Red Bull Ring Grand Prix circuit, located in Spielberg in the Styrian region of Austria. This circuit, depending on your table manners, will either consist of 10 or 9 corners, with a controversial left-hand kink in the run-up to what we see here on our circuit diagram at turn at number 2. Thank you to simracingwiki.com, of course, for their circuit maps, and this circuit is one that is broken up into 2 distinct halves. As our drivers make their way across the start-finish straight and head up towards turn number 1 at Niki Lauda corner, they'll come through a right-hander which see our drivers drop into 3rd or 2nd gear, depending on their preference, and they'll need to power their way all the way up towards Remus at turn number 2. And that run is the longest run on the circuit. Our drivers will get to the highest possible speed, and then they'll go heavy on the brakes into the uphill braking zone, and that's where we could see many an overtaking opportunity, and we wouldn't be shy of a potential 3 or 4 wide there on the opening lap. As our drivers exit Remus hairpin, they'll make their way downhill on the 2nd long straight in the run to Gissa corner at turn number 3, and there it's a downhill braking zone which will see our drivers extend on the brakes and brake a little bit earlier to compensate, as always they may end up in the gravel trap. Coming out of turn number 3, then the circuit takes a different form, because they make their way through the kink of 4 completely flat out. They'll go into the rise and then brake into Power Horse corner at turn number 5, and now we start to move into a series of rather diverse medium speed apexes which are mostly off camber of different degrees. Turn number 5 is a long left-hander where our drivers will need to trail brake down and hold onto their speed as much as possible and be confident to get back on the speed and not understeer wide. And as they come down to turn 6, it's a downhill braking zone where our drivers will sharply come off the brakes before powering it back onto the throttle and charging through 6 and 7. They'll make their way into Jochenrink corner at turn number 8, named after, of course, the infamous Austrian driver, highly decorated in motorsport. And then they'll make their way into the A1 Ring corner, named after one of the original names of the A1, we'll see, of the Red Bull Ring circuit. Getting ahead of myself there. Originally known as the Österreich Ring circuit, then known as the A1 Ring circuit, and then bought out by Red Bull and turned into the Red Bull Ring circuit. Well, the A1 corner there is a callback to the old name of old, and our drivers will make their way through turn number 9 and on to the next lap. But as we come onto our rules for today, in terms of setup, car fuel loads have been restricted to 45% for this round, and because this is an Alpha Challenge round with an Alpha race, or the feature race as it's also known, there is going to be one mandatory pit stop in which drivers must take on fuel to get to the end of the race. A driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 13 or more instant points, and if they pick up 16 points, it will be a disqualification from the race. The following bonus points are also available, as they always are. 1 point for pole position, that is overall and not in class. 1 point for the fastest lap. 1 point for the Sublime Finesse Award, the fewest instance over the round that translates straights into, 1 point for leading a lap and 1 point for the Naked Aggression Award, which is the most overtakes completed by a driver in the given round. But that's enough rules, regulation, everything in between. I know what you're all here for, and let's head back to our live pictures here as our drivers are getting themselves set right now and making the way on around. And as we do look here to Samuel Crown heading out of turn number 8 and down towards turn number 9, with just 5 minutes left on the clock in this final practice session. And of course our drivers have 3.5 hours to practice beforehand to get themselves into the lobby, get themselves set. We do have 2 newcomers in attendance here today, and we will introduce them very shortly. But we also do say hello to you guys and girls in the YouTube and Twitch chats. Starting off with the Twitch chat there, we say hello to Miss Kitty Louise 90, and good evening to you, Miss Kitty. And I'm doing very well on this chilly Friday evening. I hope you're doing well as well and are all set for some racing action. And indeed, if you need something to fire up and make you warm, this racing action is definitely going to raise the temperature of the room. There's no doubt about it. We also say hello in the YouTube chat there to Jacob Wally, and good evening to you, Jacob. Glad to hear you enjoying the broadcast. Also to, what is there, Shadow Fox 49. Been a while since I hopped in. I bet this will be good. Well, you betcha, Shadow Fox. It is going to be a thriller. If we have to use Season 5 of the AlphaTauri Challenge, which visited the national layout of this circuit, which cut off the run up to Remus and looped back on itself immediately through what we call turns 6 and 7 here, well, we were absolutely treated to a spectacle of 3 sprint races last time in Season 5. Well, we had at one point a 6-wide run into turn number 1. Yes, I'm not mistaken. Now I have not lost my marbles. It was 6 wide for a brief moment, and our drives backed off into 2 packs of 3 going into the opening corner. Now, are we expecting a repeat of that today? Probably not. I think some other drivers might just temper it down a little bit, given it is a feature race on sprint races today, but still they'll be looking to do everything they can in order to get the best possible result, as we see Michael McLeod here making his way into turn number 8 in the back of the pack, racing Elantra as he rolls his way down for Jochen Rindt and into A1. And well, because we do have 2 newcomers, we do need to introduce them, and we start off, of course, here of Michael Cochran, as we see here the privateer making their way through turn number 2 at the moment, the American in the 777 Elantra, weaving a little bit side to side. They're not sure if he's aware that he's on camera, or alternatively where he's just trying to get some tyre temperature, but either way, welcome to him, and he'll be joining us in what is there, the Alpha class, or our top class, our Pro class if you will, and he is currently the fastest man on circuit there by a single tenth over Swirydowicz. And we also do have the arrival in the Delta class of Tyler Montanez there, fellow American as well, as I'm to understand it, although I may be incorrect on that, but the Taco Bell racing driver there, the privateer, making the way down towards turn number 3 at this point in time, down towards Gessler corner, and we're in the Honda Civic Type R there, competing for the first time in AlphaTauri Challenge history, and much like Cochran. And as they make the way on around right now, both drivers there, rookies to the series, and we look forward to seeing how they get on in their debut. Now, question there from Miss Kitty Louise in the Twitch chat. Are the previous races available to watch back? This looks like a brilliant championship. They are indeed available to watch back. Unfortunately, they're not stored permanently on the Twitch channel, but if you do look through the YouTube channel, which of these on, of course, TX141 TX on YouTube, or Paul Walsh as it's also labelled, you'll be able to see there is an archive of live broadcasts there. They're not currently in a playlist. I do need to get to work on putting them into a playlist, but all of the previous broadcasts are available there for your viewing pleasure. We do make sure to stream to both platforms there to give you options and make sure that the broadcasts are there in perpetuity. But as we see James Carr, the breakfast for dinner driver, making his way down through the left-hander of turn number 5, coming out of Power Horse, of course, one of the leading names in the championship going into this round. But the big name at the very top at the moment is this man right here, Micah Hendricks, the Halves Motorsport driver, running in the Lego liveried Elantra, coming up into turn number 1. Current championship leader overall and in the Alpha class, albeit only by a limited fashion, less than 20 points between himself and James Carr, with what is Wojciech Swirydowicz not too far behind, a further 30 points behind. Hendricks knows it is not going to be a simple case of just turning up and picking up the points. It's about delivering round in, round out, for the simple reason one drop position could be all the difference as our drivers go deeper and deeper into this championship. And with drop scores coming into effect, that will really muddle up the standings after today. I can give you certainty on that, because a number of drivers have had some major drop scores so far, and we could see a shake-up. And of course, now for every driver, they'll be looking not just to score well, but they'll need to improve on their past results. Otherwise, the points start to mean less compared to what they would have if drop scores were not in effect. Of course, we're not at the point yet we're going to be striking off results entirely, but we do start start to factor in those drop scores, and they really start to become a big factor from round number 11 onwards. But of course, we've been round 7. We're not too far away, and we're making our way into that second half of the season. Now, as we do look to Augusta Blondell, parked up currently in the run to turn number 1. They've made their way back to the pits. So in fact, we look to Kurt Smith, who's doing the same. We have got just 30 seconds to go in this practice session as our drivers are making their way back into the pit lane gradually now. So what we are going to do very quickly is we are going to transition away from circuit side in the next 10 to 20 seconds. And we will be back very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, for the commencement of the qualifying session, because of course we need to transition away to hide all the qualifying times and make sure they do not appear by accident at the very start of the qualifying session. The limitations of an iRacing replay file, but we will be back in approximately 1 minute to get qualifying underway. Don't go anywhere. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for qualifying, and our drivers are making their way out to their pit lane as we speak. And you can see here Logan McKenzie, one of many, heading out onto the circuit. And well, the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver here having a good run of form over the last couple of rounds and really have been leading the way with regards to his teammates, albeit they've all been pushing hard. We also do have, of course, Connor Achatella in attendance today, and I believe we also do have their third driver in attendance, albeit we are waiting to see if they do arrive or not. But as we do see here, McKenzie making his way, coming down towards turn number 3 at the moment, heading down towards Gesser. Does not look as though we have all 3 of the Yellow Flag Motorsports drivers here on my timing tower, and albeit you can see on the timing tower on the left hand side as well, but still with McKenzie and also Achatella rolling on down here. They'll be looking to deliver the best they can, as we do look to Shepka right now as well here, the Talksteer Racing driver heading on down in the Honda Civic Type R. And which car are we expecting to perhaps be the strongest here today? That is the big question that many of you will be asking, and if you're wondering who we're referring to as the third driver from Yellow Flag Motorsports, that is Robert Abrams. Well, we are expecting around this circuit, it could be a circuit where the Elantra is given the opportunity to really shine. Now, why is that, I hear you ask? Well, the thing about the Elantra, as we look to a Hyundai Veloster being piloted by John Lazon, is the Elantra has a good mix of characteristics across the board. It has straight line speed. It's not the best on the straights, but it's very close to being the best. The very best on the straights is the Audi RS3. Albeit you need straights which enable you to get up into 6th gear for you to really see just how strong the Audi is. But around here, most of the time we'll be seeing our drivers reach the top end of 5th gear and perhaps creeping into 6th gear depending on the gear ratio, and particularly in the Audi they may do so in the run up to Remus. But on top of that, you don't just need straight line speed, you also need acceleration, you also need cornering. And as we see there, one car pointing the wrong way, and I believe that was James Carr for a brief moment there, pointing the wrong way and resetting back to the pit lane via a tow. Well, when you do talk about cornering, the Elantra does also have that, as we see here Achatella making their way onto a flying lap, and with the cornering that's available, the Elantra has it all in perfect fashion for the Red Bull Ring. So I guess the question is, what does it not have, or what's going to hold it back from stopping it from being the car that just runs away? Well, tyre wear is the big challenge of this car. It is a car which munches through tyres, much like we munch our cereal at the dinner table, the breakfast table every morning. This car will get through a set of tyres very quickly, and especially if the trackside is really warm. If that trackside temperature is high, then you can imagine the Elantras will really struggle as time wears on and we go deeper and deeper into the race. And in sprint races, it's not as big of a factor. But when you've got a 60-minute race, it is definitely a factor, because around the 45-minute mark, that's where the Elantra drivers will start to feel that tyre degradation really taking effect. And as we bring the weather up on the right-hand side of your screen, albeit unfortunately masked a little bit by the logo there, we can see that at the moment, road temperature or track temperature is only 24 degrees centigrade, albeit we have an ambient of 26 degrees. So track temperature is coming up at the moment in qualifying, but you can imagine it will head to about 30 degrees centigrade as we go deeper into this qualifying session, and that will hold around with only partial cloud over the circuit today, and therefore we could see those tyre temperatures have a little bit of a factor towards the end, albeit we'll be looking more towards around 35 degrees centigrade upwards for it to have a major factor on the Elantra's cornering capabilities and that tyre wear rate, but still it could play a part. Now conversely, which cars are we expecting to struggle a little bit here by comparison? Well, it would be the Honda Civic Type Rs. The change with the Honda Civic is it's got great cornering, it's got great braking potential indeed. If you want to stop a car fast, it's the car to do it. However, what it lacks is straight line speed, particularly in 5th and 6th gear, and given the amount of time our drivers will spend in 5th gear on the opening half of the lap, we are expecting the Hondas to really be reliant on slipstream to be able to keep in the run in the course to turns 1, 2 and 3 if they want to try and make moves under braking there, but of course they've got the brakes to do it. Cornering wise, it's the best of them. It will be able to take to task any car through the medium speed apexes of turns 5 through to 9, but it's that acceleration factor that we are concerned about with regards to the Honda. And then in between it all, the Audi RS3 with high flying top end speed, as we see here Spencer Cockayne making their way down through turn number 9. The Audi RS3 is going to be one of those midfield cars. It's got a lot of speed, a lot of stability on the curves, but can feel a little bit bulky under turning into medium speed apexes. And what about the Hyundai Veloster? Well, for our Veloster drivers, it is going to be all about just simply using the jack-of-all-trade nature of the car to their advantage here. It's a master of none, but it does well at most things, and therefore you can imagine that Sedano and indeed everybody in the Veloster will be looking just to play it smart, not push the car too hard, and deliver from corner to corner and really hook it up as the time wears on. But as we see him making his way into turn number 2, they're coming out of Remus corner right now. We do have 5 minutes to go in this qualifying session, and a good number of our drivers now do have 2 laps underway with regards to flying laps. They will have tyre temperature almost available to them, and that means we do get an opportunity to ride on board with two of our drivers as they make their way on around and give you an idea of what an onboard lap is like around here. And we ride on board with Samuel Gran as he takes us around for a flying lap of the Red Bull Ring circuit. So heading into turn number 1, dashboard in the bottom right corner of your screen, and onto the brakes there, the 100 metre board, coming all the way down from 5th to 3rd gear, and as he passes the apex, gets back on the throttle there, but notice how he didn't quite slow the car enough and had to let the car drift beyond apex and then get back on the throttle, and that's to stop the understeer effect rolling the car beyond the exit curbing. And as he powers all his way out towards turn number 2, and up towards the braking zone here, up into 5th gear, and then onto the anchors at the 100 metre board, coming all the way down to 2nd gear, and down to 1st. In fact, as he clips the apex curve, takes plenty of it, and now powering back up through the gearbox here, down towards turn number 3, and heading on down. Grant yet to get a lap on the board, but he'll be looking to do so as soon as possible. And now into downhill braking zone for turn number 3. You notice he'll brake a little bit early here, braking at about 120 to 115 metres, dropping all the way down to 2nd gear, gets a nice early apex, gets back on the power, using the curve in there to rotate the car through. Now flat out through turn 4 as he brings the car over to the right, and will hang it right up into power horse at turn number 5. Braking out the 50 board, where's the corner apex? And then suddenly it materialises out of nowhere, very heavily off camber that corner, as he now comes down 5 and in towards 6. Downhill braking zone here, just a dab of the brakes in full. Will he drop back down to 3rd? He does indeed as he transitions into the apex of turn 6. Goes a little bit deep there, but powers on through into 7. Now makes his way up into turn number 8 as he heads up towards Jochen Ring corner. Now getting ready for the right-hander, looks at the steward's post on the left-hand side, and then the 100 metre board, then the 50 metre board, and at the 50 metre he brakes. Some of our drivers will be braking a bit earlier, some a little bit later, and as he comes down towards A1 ring corner at turn number 9, gets it broken nice and early so he can clip the apex curve and bring the car in through. Doesn't quite get all the power he wants out the corner, but still it's a good lap, and as he heads all the way down towards turn number 1, well, right now looking at a good run, albeit for Gran, it's a 43.156 and currently 2.5 temps over the fastest driver out there, which is Wojciech Swirydowicz as he makes his way across the line. And Swirydowicz right now, of course, the man who's flying in the Audi, round in, round out, and as he comes on through that, 40.569 is what he's been able to achieve so far, and he does have the toe, of course, of where's that Achetella as they make the way on up the hill. But as we say, a good evening there to Racing Game Show, raising some very good points there in the YouTube chat with regards to the Audi, and something which I'm not fully educated on, I must admit, being quite bouncy on the curves, albeit we've typically seen it be quite a stable car, but with that bounciness on the curves as well, so perhaps it can't abuse those curves as aggressively as some of the other cars. And also a very good point, and 100% agree, straight line speed is also more setup dependent than car dependent. A lot of our drivers will be running varying degrees of rear wing. They can click the wing to a certain extent up and down, and that's of course because this is an open setup series, whereby our drivers bring the setup of their choosing to the circuit. It's not a fixed setup provided by iRacing or any other setup provider or the league. Our drivers bring the setup they're comfortable with, and that means it does come down to how our drivers approach the cars as well as the choice of car. And that's why when we do talk about cars which may go strong at a circuit, don't read too much into it, for the simple reason, as Swirydowicz is showing right now, he is definitely flying on around here, and he is keeping the Hyundai Army at bay from P2 to P4, and Hendricks, Achetella and McKinsey there all within a second with In fact, a tenth of a second, I should say. Correct myself there by a factor of 10. P1 through to P4 separated by a single tenth, and that is a very tight margin to run on through. As you see Swirydowicz coming on down, he's gone purple in Sector 1 and Sector 2. Can he go purple in Sector 3 and raise the times? Well, McKenzie now goes fastest by 2 tenths on a 40.383. But what's this going to be for Swirydowicz? He crosses the line. He responds in kind with 40.318, and that is 6.5 hundredths faster. And those margins are getting tighter and tighter after every round here in qualifying, and we've still got more to go. Meanwhile, as we look to our new debutant in the Alpha class of Cochrane, as they make the way through turn number 1 very shortly, we can see them heading up towards turn 2, and right now P8 as well, looking quite nice, 8 tenths off of the provisional pole lap, but still at the same time, you can imagine here on his debut, he'll be looking to be inside the top 10 and get a feel for the lap times out there. And of course, that is a big change when you're new to a league. Being a rookie, it does come down to you need to analyse and assess who you're racing with. You may not have any experience with racing with any of the drivers around you, and therefore you've got to find your feet and find your way on in. But we talked a lot about our Alpha drives. What about our Deltas? Well, currently it is this man of Jacob Wally who is the fastest Delta out there on what is a 141.18 and fastest in class by a margin of 3 tenths, as he does leave the pit lane there for a brief moment. And we look to Daniel Smith in return, as we see Smith making the way through turn number 1 and charging up towards turn number 2. Now, the Talksteer racing driver, of course, normally known for the fact that he does run a number of waifu liveries, or referring to anime female characters who many fans would consider their waifus or their wife-to-be, if you will. And we have seen him run a number of different liveries in the past, such as the Project Melody livery, and we can't quite discern what he's running in the car at the moment. I think that is a Project Melody livery, but regardless of what livery he's running right now, he's running P13 overall. I think he'll want to try and boost his aspirations and get inside that top 10 sooner rather than later, because the thing is, of course, that Veloster will get swallowed up a little bit on the straights if he's running a bit too much rear wing. But meanwhile, one driver is swallowing up the times left, right and centre. That is Connor Achetella at 40.165, 5 thousandths faster than Swirydowicz, but do keep in mind that 5 thousandths is a tiny margin, albeit where it's 1 thousandth for 1 second. Pole is pole, and that is what the change is going to be for Swirydowicz. But the other thing we have to factor in as well here is that we do not have the ability to know which of these laps have potentially been invalidated. Again, the limitations of the technology we have available with a replay file, so we may see the qualifying order on the left hand side not be the final representation of how they line up on the grid if certain laps have been scored with an invalidation, i.e. they've gone beyond the track limits. But we're going to play with what we got here, and Hendricks right now has responded and gone the fastest of everybody, and we're almost into the 39s. It's a 40.006, only 6 thousandths of a tripping over into those 39s, and right now can anybody cross the threshold and really bring to bear that ultimate pace? Well, we've still got time to go as our drivers make the way on around, but notice how on the circuit map there in the top right corner of your screen, how the majority of our drivers do seem to be quite heavily clustered together. Everybody really trying to pick up the tail for one another. It's completely understandable. The slipstream around here on that first half of a lap can be worth a whole half a second in of itself, and if you nail it right in terms of the starting distance that you run onto lap from the driver in front, by the end of it you're going to be very close, but you'll get the tow all the way around the lap, and that could be the difference between you being on the third row and being on the front row. But as our drivers make the way on around, one driver we haven't talked about is Francois Schinck, the B-Buzz Energy driver, and in fact, because we haven't talked about him so much, we're going to be riding on board with him as he takes us around in the Hyundai Veloster. So as he heads up towards turn number 1 here, currently P7 overall, and in the Alphas, he breaks his way into turn 1, and now Alessio on the car braking at 19 metres there, going a little bit deeper compared to the previous reference lap we had, and as he makes his way out of 1 and up towards 2, absolutely flying in the run out of the opening corner, coming out of Niki Lauda curve, and now up into Remus, and as he charges up the hill, getting ready to brake in, I imagine he's going to try and go about 80 metres from Apex if he can. He does go about 85, and as he brakes on down a first gear, coming sharply down the gearbox, drilling down it very quickly, and now escalating back up it with violence, and as he makes his way up towards turn number 3, or down towards it we should really say, it's been a smooth run of the lap so far as he comes on down into the braking zone. Not a personal best sector 1, however, can he ruin sector 2 as he brakes there about 110 metres from corner apex, comes down to the second, pounds out the corner, uses all the whip, uses all the revs as well to power up through the gears, heads up into what will be 4th gear, and now coming into turn number 5, braking at about 55 metres there, and braking a little bit earlier perhaps than we had anticipated. Again, a nice line to the apex as he comes down into turn at number 6. That second sector being what was a 43.23, not an improvement compared to his previous best, as he comes out of turn 6, through 7 he goes, and now powers his way up towards what is Jochen Rindt at turn number 8, and coming all all the way on through, up to 4th, up to 5th. Now getting ready to hit the brakes one more time, braking that 55 metres from the apex, carrying the speed in 4th gear, and now making his way on down onto the brakes, dropping into 3rd, and as he makes his way out of the corner, it's been a very smooth lap from Shink, to be fair, flawless you could say. He crosses the line, and what's it going to be from Shink? Well, it's not an improvement, it's a 40.728, his previous best at 40.51, and with 1 minute to go here in overtime in the qualifying session, because it is an alpha round of course, which means that we do have overtime in qualifying where they're allowed to finish their current lap if they're on one. We hit the 15-minute count. I do believe that's still a rule that applies. I do get forgetful week in, week out, but as he makes his way up towards turn number 2 here, Shink definitely not able to find much more time out there, but I think he's done the most he can with the package at his disposal. Meanwhile, it's currently Swirydowicz who's the fastest of everybody, albeit by only a single tenth. Well, in fact, James Carr's just made me revise my words as he's gone onto P2 of 39.964. The gap now is 6 hundredths, and Swirydowicz continues to try and push. We have 2 drivers currently who are in the 39s. It's Swirydowicz ahead of Carr, and then Hendricks and McKenzie are the closest to breaking into the threshold of the 39s, as right now 30 seconds left to go. Meanwhile, in the Delta class, it would seem Eric Statz has found a way to get ahead of Wally and also Blondell as he parks and up there. It's P11 overall for Statzer right now. Is it enough? That'll be the challenge for him. As we do see there, McLeod heading to the pit lane as well. A lot of drivers do it, and we also see Swirydowicz making his way on in. So not many left to go. As 5 seconds until checkered flag on the qualifying session. We've got most of our Deltas in the pits, but meanwhile Alphas are still out there. And as they make the way on around, well, Carr, I think, thinks he's got a bit more lap time at his disposal. What about Justin Rhodes? Meanwhile, comes down through the final corner. Of course, the other breakfast for dinner driver running in the Delta class compared to his teammates who run in the Alpha class. He crosses the line. He moves up to P16 on a 41.341, but not the qualifying session he's wanted compared to what his teammates been able to do, and Rhodes having his weakest qualifying session in a good while. Meanwhile, Ashella crosses the line, does not improve. We've got a couple of drivers making the way into the pits, but we still do have a couple making the way on around. As I look at my commentary booth window, we have had Cochran and also Shepka coming in, and the same for Hendricks. What about Carr here as he makes his way on through? We've also got Bauer just ahead. Well, Carr just misses the pit lane entry and catches it in time. David Bauer, meanwhile, the last driver to come on around, it's complete. The final flying lap of qualifying, he's currently P17. This is going to be on the bubble. He crosses the line, he moves up to P13 overall with 40.979, but he's outside the top 10. It's not a qualifying session, it's wanted, and that's qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen. And with it, it is Wojciech Swirydowicz who takes overall an alpha pole, and then P11, it's your delta pole sitter of Eric Statzer. But the bonus point goes to Swirydowicz. He strikes first here today at the Red Bull Ring in qualifying, but within the next minute we'll be heading into the gridding process for the race. And of course, qualifying is just one very small aspect of the whole race day, and who will be able to get the launch off the line. That will be the ultimate challenge for our drivers. But as we continue to look at the scenery here, well, it has been definitely a close qualifying session, and our top 10 separated by less than a second. That is absolutely phenomenal indeed. Eric Statz there only 34 thousandths beyond a second off of the what was the leader, and that goes to show you just how much pace everybody's bringing to this race. But as we continue to wait for that transition to the grid, which should not be too long now, of course, what can we expect in terms of strategy? Well, we'll come on to that as we go a little bit deeper into the race, but we can expect some strategic flexibility from our drivers here, given the criticality of battling, how much time it can cost racing at the Red Bull Ring. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few attempts at the undercut today, but of course, our drivers will need to survive that run to turn number 1 and also up into 2. But as we now do get that transition over to the grid, well, let's walk you through it now and never. But as our drivers make the way onto the grid then, they line up as follows. In round number 7 of Season 6 of the Alpha Touring Challenge hosted on iRacing, it is Wojciech Swirydowicz in the end who takes overall pole position, the privateer, with 39.905, only 1/10 faster than Micah Hendricks, who lines up P2 for Hassel's Motorsports. Then Logan McKenzie and Michael Cochran will line up on your second row, the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver ahead of the privateer on his debut, with James Carr in the end demoted to 5th due to track limit invalidations for breakfast for dinner, joined by Beaverbuzz Energy's Jerome Bajulaz on the third row. And then we have the fellow Beaver Buzz driver, Francois Schink P7, joined by Talk Steer Racing's Matt Shepka. Then we have Connor Achitella and John Lauzon line up together on row number 5, completing the top 10, with your Delta pole sitter of Eric Statzer P11, joined on the 6th row by David Bow from Breakfast for Dinner. And then on row number 7, it's the pair of Auguste Blondel and Michael McLeod, with row 8 contested by Jacob Wally and Daniel Smith, the Talk Steer Racing driver there having a difficult qualifying session. Justin Rhodes and Daniel Sedeno, the two Delta drivers there, line up together on row number 9, with Spencer Cockayne and Tyler Montales completing your top 20. Row number 11 is Samuel Cran and Kurt Smith, and I believe that's all 22 of our drivers accounted for. Kurt Smith not putting the time on the board. The Not Last Motorsports driver will be starting from last, but he'll be looking to try and find a way to bump his way up the order as soon as possible. But as you can see here, we have a sellout crowd at the Red Bull Ring in Austria, albeit virtually, but still the racing may be virtual, but the emotions and everything else that goes on through is 100% real. And as we get ready to go here, can Swirydowicz find a way to get the launch off the line up towards turn number 1? Of course, it's a slight uphill launch for our drivers on the front couple of rows, and the ground does flatten out a little bit towards the back of the grid, and that could be a big contributing factor. But only 20 seconds away from going green, we are waiting for one driver to join the grid, and that is Spencer Cockayne, and then we will be very shortly getting the lights. And now we await the lights. And it's lights out, and away we go for round number 7 of Season 6 of the ATC, as we see the one driver stalling on the grid and everyone having to part the seas. But as they make the way up the hill, the Polish Swirydowicz gets a good run, but further back there we've got multiple cars in a major collision. But looking further on forward, we see here most of our drivers at the front of the field have found the way on through. Daniel Sedeno involved in that major incident, for what we understand, also Tyler Montanes. But as we continue to focus here on the lead group of drivers as they make the way up the hill, Cochrane here with pressure on his inside from Jerome Bajulaz as they come up towards turn number 2, and onto the brakes they go. Logan McKinsey gets a reasonable start as the defend from Cochrane. Meanwhile, as Cochrane tries to go around the outside, but Bajulaz, they're forcing the privateer to go deep and open up the door for him, as we are hearing that Sedeno's had to be towed to the pit. So he definitely was one of the drivers who was really caught up in the forefront of that major shunt. But how many other drivers may have wounds to their cars, that's what we're going to have to wait to find out shortly, as they make the way on down into turn number 3 for the first time of asking. Bajulaz backs out there. Meanwhile, a little bit further back, you can see Eric Statzer. Well, he's got a 2-wide situation behind. John Lauzon trying to poke his way round the outside of what is there, Michael McLeod. In fact, on the inside of Michael McLeod, we should say, McLeod trying to go all the way round. But as they come down into turn number 5 here, Statzer goes defensive. He has to go a little bit touch and feel onto that inside curve, and John Lauzon sweeps the outside here, relying on the corner and also those high temperatures of the Velocitas tyres, and get up to temperature very quickly. And as they make the way through turn number 6 into 7, Statzer holds firm and holds the position. You can see Lauzon there and also McLeod both taken to the gravel, and that'll be a slight off track as we understand it. And as they make the way in towards turn number 8 right now, Statzer holds firm. Meanwhile, you can see there Lauzon under pressure. Justin Rhodes trying to go round the outside of what is Michael McLeod as they come through turn number 8. Side by side they exit out of Jochen Rindt down into A1, and now Justin Rhodes drops behind there, deciding not to push his luck as they make the way onto the next lap. Daniel Smith meanwhile off circuit there, and that is in the run out of turn 6 into 7. But meanwhile, the front of the field, it's Wojciech Swirydowicz who leads as they go on to lap number 2 and charge their way up towards turn 2. Coming on through then, it's Swirydowicz ahead of Hendricks, followed by McKinsey, Bajulaz, Cochrane, Schink, Shepka, Achitella, followed by Bow and Statzer, who complete your top 10. There's Eric Statzer at the rear of the group and falling back over the top 9 as they make the way on through and up towards Remus corner. But meanwhile up front, we can see here Hendricks going on the inside of Swirydowicz. They're not battling one another too hard. No doubt Swirydowicz leaving the inside line completely open there and trying to get the message through to Hendricks, which is, I don't want to fight you right now. I want us to break away, as they make the way down towards turn number 3. But this top 9 has cleared P10 backwards, as we see there in the rear of the picture. John Lauzon and Michael McLeod have both found their way, or at least Lauzon has found his way past Statzer, and McLeod finally sweeps in front and tucks in as they make the way down into turn number 3 once more. Now as they come on through, Justin Rhodes behind him. Justin Rhodes getting 4 places off the start-finish line, having an absolutely superb start, and he gains 1 more as he retakes the lead of the Delta class on circuit. And well, right now of course Justin Rhodes, your championship leader of the Deltas, with his closest rival Eric Statzer, who had a difficult run last time in Donington. But there's a lock up there for Michael McLeod, and the back of the pack racing driver. That is not going to help his racing aspirations, but thankfully he brings it back on board. As meanwhile Kurt Smith, they're battling side by side with Auguste Blondel, and the Not Last Motorsports driver there goes toe to toe with the Blue Flag Motorsports driver as they make the way up towards turn number 8. And in the foreground, that's Justin Rhodes battling with Statzer. Statzer's not giving in here as he carries the speed better in the Honda through the medium medium speed corners, but it's in the run to the next corner. That's where he's losing out, it's into the pits. I do believe that is a Gus Blondell with damage to the car, but as they make the way on through right now, Michael McLeod, after gaining so much, has lost out so much as well, and now he's got it all to do again. But as they make the way on through and up towards turn number 1, with Blondell in at the moment into the pit lane. We've also got Daniel Solino with all the damage on the car, and we say hello to Lieutenant Dan, who says that was my race. Very unfortunate for you, Dan, but at the same time, plenty more rounds to come, and well, hopefully next round we'll not see an early issue like that. We see you going back out to the circuit right now. We do see our leaders of Wojciech Hendricks there, ahead of Swirydowicz, and Swirydowicz now under pressure from McKenzie as they make the way up towards turn number 3. But as they charge on through, we ride on board here with the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver, who is starting to look like a potential move, but a little lift off there, interesting enough. And again, I think McKenzie's in two minds. He wants to battle for this P2, but he can see that Hendricks, if given the time and space a day, will just start to creep off into distance. And the thing with the slipstream of these touring car racing machines, the slipstream will work out to a distance of about 1.8 seconds, but as you get closer and closer, particularly when you're within a second, normally more towards 8/10, depending on the level of rear wing and the length of the straight, that's where we really see that slipstream start to come into effect. And that means for the driver, you do not want the guy in front to get more than 8/10 away, because they're faster than you on the lap without tow, then you really start to lose out. But as McKenzie gets a good run coming out of 7 and up towards 8, just tucking in once again, thinks about it, just takes a little bit of an eye look on the inside, but says no, I'm not going for it, as he drifts his way in there with the rear brake bias on the Elantra, and now comes down into the final corner once more. But they've really pushed it right, and as he fights with the steering wheel there, and the top 3 starting to break away from Bajulaz and Cochrane behind, as you can see it there, despite losing the place to Bajulaz on the opening lap. Cochrane still staying very close to the P4 drivers. They make the way up the hill and definitely making a strong debut here as they come through. Meanwhile, a bit further back, we've got James Carr having a good run on Eric Statzer, heading out the final corner up the hill towards turn number 1, and the Delta driver there on the outside of your picture, and Carr tucks in front, and well, Carr coming on through, as I believe we are experiencing slight connectivity issues for Justin Rhodes, albeit he's still leading the Delta class in P11. There's that a sign of something to come, of course, and not a retirement that we want. It'd be the equivalent to engine failure in a real world race. But as they make the way on through, we'll look a little bit further back here too. Our Delta drivers were battling for P3, and it is Samuel Cran just ahead of Kurt Smith at the moment, and of course Kurt Smith, one of the big names up there. He's currently P3 in the Delta Championship is Smith. He's in at the Elantra behind in the purple pink Elantra with the red colour shading as well. Meanwhile, Coran there in the Red Bull inspired livery Elantra, making its way on through and down towards turn number 3, the all-white car bar the logos. And as they make the way in towards turn number 3 very shortly here, right now Michael McLeod, I think, has got to do more rear guard action in terms of looking out for the Deltas behind him, then going on the offensive after the Deltas in front of him. He's an Alpha driver, of course, but do keep in mind in this championship, regardless of what class you're in, you're all competing for the same set of points on circuit, whereby your overall finishing position is what you get points for, and therefore as a Delta you want to get an upper hand on the Alphas, and conversely as an Alpha you do not want to let a Delta through, because that could be critical points lost for you. But as we look back up to the battle for P4, Bajula's right now holding off Cochrane and Shink as they make the way down into turn number 8 once again, and we ride on board the gearbox here of the Blue Buzz Energy 99 car as they make the way into the final corner. Now of course we're only 7 minutes in here, and we are starting to see a brief lull appear in a bit of the battle in action, but I think right now drivers have started to form into small packs, and they're all starting to figure out, are they racing each other here, and whether they're losing pace in running in formation together, or whether it's more providential and more useful to them to be able to run as a pack and not fight to catch up to the next pack in front. Now Bajula, as it would seem, is getting bare exits off the corners, which we would expect from the Velocity in terms it does have quite a bit of flexibility on that front end, but meanwhile you can see on the straights here, just hangs not losing Cochrane whatsoever, and with 7 tenths to McKenzie up the road from Bajula's right now, I think he'll be grateful for that distant tow as they make the way through turn number 3. But as they come roaring out here, coming all the way through once again, we do look to Kurt Smith, who's battling right now with Gran. He's going to try and go around the outside as Gran defends there, puts it on hard onto the inside, but then gives it a little bit of leeway on the brakes, and Kurt Smith decides to go all in on the hammer and get it done there for Not Last Motorsports, and it is number 3 on the car, and now he is effectively P3 in the Deltas, P15 overall, as he makes his way down towards turn number 3 once more. But as he comes running on down here now, his next target will be Michael McLeod in front, and McLeod is currently 1.3 seconds up the road, and well, he'll close that gap gradually if he can maintain the pace, but then he's got to find a way on past McLeod without losing time to hunt down Eric Statzer. But as they come on through, we do look to all the way back in P20 here, and well, 2 drivers who've had both dismal starts to their race, that's Daniel Smith ahead of Auguste Blondel, but both drivers right now racing together here for one of the last places on the grid. And we'll keep this in mind as well as the Talksteer Racing driver tries to break away from what is there your blue flag motorsports driver as they make their way into turn number 3. As they come into the braking zone, we look back up to the battle for P4. And we can see here, all the drivers in single camera shot, the leaders in the foreground coming underneath the camera very gradually. That's your top 3. And then now we're looking at Jerome Bajulais here on the right side of your picture with Cochrane on his inside, albeit for a brief while. And Cochrane once again really thinking about it here. I think Cochrane's wondering whether he could be a little bit faster if he wasn't the second car in this sequence. Again, he could be just pulling out to shave off a bit of top end speed on the run down the straights. That way he doesn't have to be as early on the brakes, and therefore he can help save the tyres and also save a little bit of fuel by lifting and coasting into the zone. But something tells me that Cochrane right now may be looking for that pass soon. I think he's feeling as though Bajulais just keeping him there a little bit longer than perhaps he wants to be as they make the way on through it and down towards turn number 3 once more. But as they come charging on down in towards that braking zone in short order. Francois Schink at the back of this group as well in the Veloster. But meanwhile, Cochrane goes to the move. He looks at it on the inside here. He's going to be condensed to the inside, but he just keeps the door open there enough. Bajulais squeezing, but he can't squeeze him forever. And then Cochrane has to back off the throttle, otherwise it would have been a spear into the side, the rear quarter panel on the right hand side of Bajulais' car. And Bajulais there making sure Cochrane can't make haste as they make the way out of turn number 5 and down towards 6. But Cochrane now I think knows that he can trouble Bajulais to that P4, albeit now the leaders are 2 seconds up the road, and therefore if he's going to make the move he needs to do it sooner rather than later because he's losing time. Hand over fist here with regards to the leaders just being able to break away as a leading trio as we head towards the end of the 10th minute of racing. But still with 15 minutes to go here and plenty of time still on the cards, we look a little bit further back here to the battle for P8 in the foreground. That is David Bauer behind, and the focus of our cameraman's attention is the 490 car of Talksteer Racing's Matt Shepka as they make the way down into turn number 9, coming through A1. Fastest lap of the race going to P2 driver Swirydowicz with 40.236. But meanwhile the driver's a little bit further back here, not quite on the pace. In fact, Bauer and Shepka both lapping in the 41s by comparison. The top 3 lapping in the low 40s. It's almost a whole second that the top 3 are breaking away from the mid-pack through. But as we can see here right now, whether you're in the 41s or the 40s, there's still plenty of battling there on the circuit as the drivers make the way on around and further back. James Carr here currently in P12, looking to close up to Justin Rhodes just ahead of him, of course teammate and Delta leader at this time. And I wonder if these two might be swapping position in due course. But of course it does come down to whether James Carr feels he's got more pace to be able to creep away and potentially push John Lauzon back towards his teammate as they make the way out of turn 2 and down towards 3. I think now we're going to see the tell here as they make the way on through, and Will Rhodes covers it off initially. The car's very close. Now it looks like he's leaving the door open here for James Carr. Car's going to go up the inside. Rhodes backs off the throttle, and I think Rhodes there respecting the fact that at this point in the race Carr's got a bit more pace, and also Rhodes just needs to hold on to his position to effectively gain in the Delta Championship, given the fact he is leading the Delta drivers on circuit currently. But meanwhile as they make the way on around, we do look to Jerome Bajulais here running P4 still, and as he comes on out to turn 6 into 7, he is still really having to try and work to keep Cochrane at bay as Cochrane once again gets a good run, this time to Jochen Rindt. He's going to be on the inside and under braking here. This is where it gets difficult, too wide into turn number 8, given the amount the car starts to drop off and understeer wide as they make the way out to turn number 8, and Cochrane up the inside there gets P4 in nice fashion as meanwhile Bajulais tucks back in, but Cochrane under pressure as they come out of turn number 9. The 777 driver has to pull defensive. Bajulais on the right of your picture, behind is Schink, and as they make the way up the hill, Cochrane covers off the inside. But remember, all this battling is going to cost them time, as meanwhile P7 driver Conor Achetella has caught up to this trio now, and it's a 4-way battle for P4 as they make the way on towards turn number 2. But as they charging up the hill, we look to our leaders here as they come on through, and this top 3 right now, well, to be fair, you may be thinking, well, why don't they fight one another? They all know what's going on behind. They know that battle for P4 is costing the P4 through to P7 group of drivers so much time, and none of them wants to waste time right now. But meanwhile, we look away for a brief moment, and Schink gets the move there on Bajulais as they come out of Remus. It's going to be a drag race here. It's going to be the Veloster that punches up through the gears faster than the Elantra that has the top end speed. And as they make the way down towards turn number 3, on the brakes they go. Schink defends here. Meanwhile, it's going to be Bajulais around the outside. Can Bajulais get the cut back? He looks to almost have it, but in the end he has to back out. There was Schink just parking it in time for the apex. But look at Cochrane already. How much daylight Cochrane has put between. He's put a whole second in between himself and Schink as they make the way down through 5. as they come rolling on down the hill. We've got more on going here as Eric Stats has to fend off Kurt Smith for P2 and the Deltas P14 overall, and well holding off Smith as they made the way out to turn 4 up into 5, and as they come on through, well, Stats goes defensive into turn 5, and I wonder whether with such a tight line, well, Smith goes to the grass almost on the inside there, trying to cut back on the apex but cutting back too soon, and that's going to keep Stats safe for the next few corners no less. But as they make the way out to 6 into 7, these two are really going at it, and right now Justin Rhodes, class leader, is already 8 seconds clear and pulling up ground on the pair as they make the way in towards turn number 8. But meanwhile we look back to the battle for P6 here, and now Jerome Bagilas, after losing 2 places on the previous lap, on this lap as he goes on to his 9th lap under race conditions, is under pressure from Acitella behind, who we ride on board with as he makes his way up the hill for Yellow Flag Motorsports. And well, Acitella in the 55 car, very happy going into this round, been able to repair his internet connection issues that were plaguing him in the start of the season, and now he's going all in here, and we're seeing a revived Acitella, I would argue, given the fact he's had a couple of rounds which have not been perhaps his best in terms of what's reflected on him, but right now he's definitely going for it here and looking to make amends as he goes hunting down the inside of Bagilas. It's going to be a drag race between the two Elantras as they make the way in towards turn number 3, and well, Acetella's got his nose fully alongside. He will be able to go for the move under braking as he gets it hooked up there. It's nose to nose as they come on through turn number 3, and they exit now Augusta corner, and as they make the way up through forward into 5, well, Bagilas tries to come on back, but Acitella covers him off, and now it is Con Acitella who moves up into P6, and a classic move in the run to turn number 3 on an exit. Meanwhile, Gus Blondell's into the pits. I believe there's further issues for the Delta drivers. I look out my commentary box window, but as they make the way down through turn number 6 and up towards 7, right now Acitella will try and hook back onto the back of Francois Schenk, albeit there's a 1.2 second gap between the two. It's close to 1.1 seconds in the run for the last couple of corners. 15 minutes complete, still 3/4 of the race to go, but has this battling cost Acitella a lot of time, and will have to use a bit of extra fuel in order to make up the lost ground. But of course, remember, we do have that pit stop which our drivers will need to take fuel on, and the more fuel saving you can do early on, the better in terms of how much time you spend in the pits later on as our drivers head on to another lap. As they come roaring on through. Meanwhile, off camera, we can confirm that in fact Eric Statzer has been passed by Kurt Smith. Now, we don't have confirmation of where that happened, but we do know that it has happened on this lap. Statzer has dropped to P3 in the Delta class right now, P15 overall, as Kurt Smith takes P2. And in terms of the relative pace of the two drivers, we're waiting to see when they're both on clear laps and they're not fighting one another, whether either of them does have the pace to hunt down what is Justin Rhodes. And Rhodes on that last lap setting a 40.73, a personal best, and will Kurt Smith's going to have to go some, given his previous best lap has been a 40.72, and that would have been when the tyres were in their absolute freshest. But you can imagine these tyres will last a long time, and we're not expecting our drivers to take any change of tyres here today unless they completely flat spot the tyres with an instant or damage the tyre somehow. But otherwise, if they have an instant free race with regards to tyre management, then they should be able to go the full 60 minutes without having to change even the fronts. But as they make the way on around here, we look up to the front of the field, and Hendricks meanwhile continues to hold that lead, albeit I think it's looking a little bit more tenuous now as the Hassel's Motorsport driver makes the way through turn 6 and into 7, with McKinsey falling a little bit back off of the top 2, and then in between them of course is Wojciech Swirydowicz as they make the way up towards 8, and as they come roaring on up the hill here, well, what is McKinsey thinking? I wonder if McKinsey is trying to fall back a little bit further and do a lot more lifting and coasting. Perhaps he feels as though he can get the jump done when they make the way into the pit lane. Of course, I can tell you that Hendricks and Swirydowicz are not waiting. They are going 100% right now, and McKinsey will have to do as close as possible to that to keep with them. But I think given the fact he's given himself half a second space as they make the way on the straight and not really gaining here, that may be a sign that he is turning the wick down slightly and seeing what fuel conservation he can do now as we make our way a bit closer towards the pit window. Now, when are we expecting our drivers to pit approximately? Well, typically, much like what we saw in the Hungaroring, a lot of drivers do try to put the pit stop around the midpoint of the race, so around 25 to 35 minutes of the race complete. Some will pit as early as 20 minutes if they're feeling daring, but otherwise we may see some drivers go all the way to the 40th through to the 45th minute if they can save a lot of fuel and get themselves to go long. But meanwhile, speaking of one driver here who is planning to go on the offensive rather than go long right now, it is none other other than James Carr as he comes into turn number 2. We're hearing that Jacob Wally is into the pit, and we'll try and get confirmation of what exactly that's about very shortly. I believe it may just be a drive-through as he's not currently parked up in his pit box. He's just making his way through, and in fact he has left the pit lane, so I think for Jacob Wally it was a drive-through that he's had to serve in the pit lane, albeit in fact no, he has parked up in his pit box. So I look out my current box window now, and well, he is taking his pit stop early, so that is going to be in the 18th minute that Wally has decided to take his pit stop, 14 seconds in duration. He's leaving the pit lane now, and he has gone very early in the day. Well, at least that's the data that's being fed through to us, as we see James Carr here tucked in behind, still trying to find a way past John Lauzon, and we ride on board here with the breakfast for dinner driver who wants to get inside the top 10 sooner rather than later. And as he comes out of 6 into 7 here, of course, it's a bit of an interesting situation for Lauzon, because in front of him, Shepka right now in the Honda does seem to be struggling a little bit for top end speed, but as they make the way into turn number 8, Lauzon here hooked in close, but he won't want to be too close. He wants to give himself some breathing room in order to go on the offensive with Shepka, but the problem is he can't really back off and give himself that breathing room unless he wants to leave himself vulnerable for James Carr to simply say, right, well, don't mind if I do, I'll just take the place off of you. And as they make the way up the hill, up towards turn number 1 and charging on through, we have had confirmation from Jacob Wally in the YouTube chat. In fact, that pit stop was to repair damage on the car once the window had opened in order to take the fast repair, and Jacob Wally caught up then in that little knock earlier on in the race that we did see. And as they make the way up towards turn number 2, thank you Jacob for clarifying that. And right now James Carr here looking for the run. You can see Lauzon there going to the inside, slightly off camera on the right now as they go onto the brakes, and Lauzon reappears already briefly on the very right hand side, and Carr here, well, he's trying to find it, but Lauzon really now digging his claws in here and saying, I don't want to lose P10. But the problem with this is, of course, that they are giving the opportunity for Shepka and also Bauer to try and break away, albeit it looks so Bauer not really clearing away from the group. Shepka not able to clear away at all, and as they make the way under braking into turn number 3, Lauzon right now playing the balancing act very well indeed, but how long will he be able to do so before James Carr gets inventive, or will we see one of this group of 4 drivers opt to come into the pits early? And as they make the way into turn number 5, well, that was a near miss from David Bauer there, almost going overly deep through 5 and missing his apex, but just about brought it to the line. That's the latest you want to go into the braking zone for turn number 5. I can tell you that from personal experience in the simulator. You don't want to go any later than that, so the corner just disappears from you, and the next thing you know, you're off in that distant gravel. But as Bauer makes his way in towards turn number 8, the breakfast for dinner driver here definitely looking right now to try and break away. He's pushing it, and I wonder if perhaps he's setting himself up for a pit stop within the next 5 minutes or so, given the fact he is seemingly now really trying to extend the tanks on the car. But as they make their way up towards turn number 1, look at James Carr here at the back of the group, now trying to push his way one step further up in the quartet as he makes his way on the inside here versus Lauzon. He's going to have to take it because Lauzon's not going to give him any opportunity, and as they come on through, well, Lauzon gives him the space and James Carr keeps the door open, and now it's about the drag race up the hill towards Remus corner, and notice how both drivers are trying to fit themselves into the toe of Shepka, and in the end Shepka giving a little bit more toe initially to Carr as they head up into the braking zone. Carr will have his nose on the inside here, Lauzon will be on the outside. It's roles reversed this time in terms of position, and as they make the way into turn number 2, Carr gets it nicely hooked up. Lauzon goes a little bit deep, respecting the fact he's got the Elantra on his inside. They're still racing side by side in the run down towards turn number 3. I think James Carr may have this so long as he gets it right under braking. I don't think he's going to have an issue given the run he's got, but then again Lauzon's had a nice run. In fact, Lauzon goes a little bit deeper on the brakes, I think carrying a bit more speed, and as they make the way out of turn number 3, well, in the end he does have to back up, does Lauzon, otherwise that understeer would have taken him to the gravel slightly, and in the end James Carr does get it done, but Lauzon is right there and looking to pick a fight as they make the way down through turn number 5. But as they come on down and up towards turn number 6 once again, I think it will be a brief respite before they start to get the gloves out once more, and meanwhile we look a little bit further back to Eric Statzer, who has just had an off track at turn number 3, and now he has released Samuel Cran to move up into P3 in the Delta class P15, as Statzer's day has started to go a little bit from good to bad to worse as he makes his way down towards turn number 6. But as he comes on through, we look from our P2 driver in the Delta Championship up to our race leader at the moment of Micah Hendricks. He makes his way out of turn number 1. And the leaders here continue to run in the same formation that we saw them in previously, but you can see how McKinsey still staying comfortably behind the pair at arm's length. Meanwhile, Swirydowicz very close by comparison in the Audi RS3, and it really is interesting to wonder where the strategy is going to come in for these guys. Now, if we had to play it based on past form that we've seen from them, we've normally seen Hendricks try and go as long as possible, and the same for McKinsey. Meanwhile, Swirydowicz normally tries to anchor his pit stop around the midpoint as we understand it. And so, could we have two drivers who really try to push one another long? And McKinsey right now, you would imagine, will be going the longest of the group. Lap time wise, they are not compromising on lap time. They are all lapping in the low 40s. That last lap, Hendricks at 40.3, Swirydowicz at 40.07, fastest lap of the race, and Logan McKinsey at 40.08, and then compared to behind, Michael Cochran in P4 a 40.9. Our leaders right now are lapping between 6 to 9 tenths a lap faster, depending on how much they're pushing one another, and then the run from P4 to P7 is all in the mid to high 40s by comparison. We'll be on that last lap. Drominger set the 40.23 at the back of this group, so he's definitely got some life in the car just yet as they make the way down towards turn number 8, but it's very interesting to see how the top three really pushing the tempo, and nobody else really able to respond again because they're working together mutually. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, as they normally say in the saying goes. That is working out for the top three at the moment. You can imagine the gloves will definitely come off when they get towards the final 10 minutes of this race, should they be that close together. And I think we will start to see those sparks fly. But as they make their way onto what is lap number 15 on the race conditions, we can see a little bit further back here, Shepka still keeping Carr and Lauzon at bay and still within arm's reach of David Bauer in return. Shepka here, the Talk Steer Racing driver, definitely not giving him whatsoever and not showing any signs of weakness in the car as he makes his way onwards towards turn number 2. And well, in fact, it's Carr and Lauzon who seem to be squaring off against one another once again a little bit more, as we hear that we have had a retirement for Gus Blondell due to issues with the car, and that's our first retirement of the day. As meanwhile, into the pit, I believe, is Tyler Montanez as he comes on in, and this could be our first scheduled pit stop, and it is for the privateer who's coming from P16 at P5 in the Deltas. But meanwhile, as he comes on through, we look back to that battle to be inside the top 10, and James Carr right now holding on to that final top 10 position ahead of their John Lauzon as they make the way down through the right hander of turn number 3. But as we can see there, a little bit of a run up wide going for David Bauer, will be using all the width of the road, and then everyone else trying to play it a little bit more conservatively, and I think not trying to push the tyres too hard at this point. But definitely different lines here from David Bauer, and I wonder if perhaps he's struggling a little bit with the tyres at the moment, or whether he's just opting to run lines which just give him a little bit more room to perhaps protect the tyres by letting the car go deep. And then again, letting it go that deep into 5 and the same for 3, he's going to be pushing a little bit more, so perhaps he is just trying to get the hammer down instead as they make the way out of 7 and up towards 8. As they come on through him, we try to assess what is going through the mind of David Bauer at the moment. We see here right now going through the mind of James Carr as a move on Shepka, and as they come down into 8 and 9, Carr's on the inside, that's going to open the door, and can Lauzon now make it a 2-for-1 special on Shepka as they make the way up towards turn number 1. Lauzon's not got the run as the Canadian as they head on up the hill, but will he find it in the run to 2? Now that'll be the big question as we ride on board here. Oh goodness, there's contact! There's a big knock on the rear, and Lauzon backs it off immediately as we just jump on board to ride with them. Contact to the rear of Shepka's car, and Shepka there now will definitely have a very heavily damaged rear bumper, and also I think just a little bit of damage on the front of Lauzon's car, and that is a whack as they make the way up towards turn number 2, and both drivers are going to be losing some straight line speed. There's no question about it now, because whilst these cars are tough, they can take a good few knocks. I can tell you these touring car racing class machines, in fact if you think back to Super Touring, BTCC or even modern day touring car, that's the level of knock they can take. But at the same time, when you take body damage, it does cost you quite a bit of time on the straights, and with there being 3 long straightaways here, it's definitely going to be costly lap in, lap out. And thankfully, when they do come into the pits, there will be a fast repair available to do some repair work on the car, albeit who is going to come into the pits sooner rather than later. And as Lauzon comes out of turn number 4 and up towards 5, you can see now Justin Rhodes, Delta leader, goes round the outside of Lauzon and takes the position. And I think Lauzon may need to consider coming to the pit sooner rather than later, because I think he is losing a lot of time on the front end of that Veloster. The car is just dragging along, and is there anything else that's potentially broken or on the verge of breaking, given the knock between the two of them? But as they come on through and up towards turn number 8, we will see if Lauzon comes on in on the run out of turn number 8 this time around. Of course, he does have to back off the throttle when he comes up through the apex of 8 in order to make it into the pit lane, and indeed he comes in, and it's the same for Shepka. Both drivers there decide to take their pit stop early after the contact, and it will now come down between them in terms of who's going to need to take on more fuel and how much will it close them up together. Meanwhile, speaking of staying closed up together, as we make our way towards the end of the first half of this race, we can see the closeness of Hendricks, Swirydowicz and McKenzie, as we've had confirmation we have had a retirement from Michael McLeod due to technical issues with the car. He brought it into the pit lane at the end of the previous lap he was on, and they've decided to retire the car, and we have had our second retirement of the day. But with Shepka in the pit lane still, I believe Shepka now leaving the pits. I look at my commentator booth window. He will re-emerge, and meanwhile John Lauzon at some point will need to do the same, I do believe. But Shepka is going to leave the pit lane well before John Lauzon. And meanwhile Swirydowicz here, as we focus on our top three racing on the round, we can see how they continue to stay firmly together. Nobody right now giving an indicator they're wanting to push. Alternatively, looking to make that early pit stop, as it is Hendricks who leads ahead of Swirydowicz and McKenzie. And I think it will come down between these three in terms of who is your overall winner today, and also what the order of that overall podium is going to be, and the Alpha podium with it. But as they come through turn number 8, will any of them flinch into the pit lane? It doesn't look so. They all stay together. They're all right now playing the game of chicken in terms of who's going to be the first to give in, who's going to reveal their hand. Meanwhile, speaking of drivers here who are revealing their hand, we could say that Spencer Cockayne battling with Daniel Smith, as Smith gets ahead then the run up towards turn number 2, and Spencer Cockayne, the Hassel's Motorsports driver in the Audi RS3, just simply lies in wait as he comes on through the corner there, not battling it too hard, focusing on bringing home P5 in the Delta class today as he comes on through. But do keep in mind that Jacob Wiley has already taken his pit stop, and with the repair, presuming he took on the fuel to go to the end of the race as well, and it's enough to do so, then he could right now be taking a number of places back later on. Meanwhile, into the pit lane we do have Justin Rhodes, who's coming in from what is the lead of the Delta class, and well, we believe he's going to pull over into the pits. In fact, he has not pulled it at all. That is a drive-through penalty for Justin Rhodes then, and that means you now have a new race leader in the Delta class. P10 overall in the form of Not Lost Motorsports is Kurt Smith, the Canadian driver, leads his first laps in an Alpha Challenge race in the Alpha Touring Challenge Championship as he makes his way up into turn number 2. Now this will be a little bit of a new situation for him, although he won't be shy to lead in laps, there's no question about it. But we're wondering what's happened. I think he will definitely start to believe that he can bring home the win in the Deltas today, and that will be a major boost to his championship aspirations, given the fact that right now he's been making ground on Eric Statzer for P2 in the championship, and he's closing down gradually. If it finishes as is, he'll be closing down gradually Justin Rhodes as well as he makes his way through turn number 3. As he comes on through, we do believe we have a pit stop that never seems to end for John Lauzon in the pit lane. He's currently P20 on the timing tower there, and I think it may be a retirement for John Lauzon as well, unless we're mistaken. So we may have a third retirement of the day after the knock on the back of Shepka's car, and I think that may have done more damage than we just saw in terms of bodywork, and that's very unfortunate for John Lauzon if so. But meanwhile, speaking of what is John Lauzon and the Beaver Buzz team, we look to one of his teammates here, Francois Schenk, the leading Beaver Buzz Energy driver now, and he's trying to hold off Achatella as they make the way up through turn number 1, albeit they're holding on to 7/10 to the rear of Michael Cochran as they make the way up towards 2. But it does look as though this quartet of drivers in the battle for P4 are spreading out now, and it's becoming more about longevity rather than battling for position. As they make the way towards turn number 2, the one driver who does seem to be wilting a little bit in terms of pace at this point, but again, it could be tyre saving and fuel saving being done to the utmost to seeing how far he can extend it out to. Jerome Bagil, that's the second of the Beaver Buzz Energy drivers in this group, holding firm 1 second behind Achatella as they make the way down towards turn number 3 and in the charge. But with it, of course, now that we are in the second half of the race, I think any moment we could start to see one of these drivers show a sign of pushing hard, and I think Francois Schenk could be now looking to push it a little bit. He's closed up to the back of Cochran, he's got within 3/10 on the exit of turn 3, through 4 and up into 5 they go, and the Veloster driver here staying so close as they make the way through the left-hander and down towards turn number 6. Now what will he do when he comes around through turn number 8? That'll be the question, as we see there Cochran sliding a little bit under braking into turn 6. He's feeling the pressure, there's no question about it, and as they make the way up towards 8, well, the number 18 car here is trying to mount the offensive, or is this the pull off to the right as he comes out of turn number 8? Well, he comes on through, and has our guess been correct? No, he stays out there. He wants to get a move on, and I think it will be a pit stop in the next couple of laps, but Francois Schenk now being told you've got to get the hammer down. These laps are important as they make the way up towards turn number 1. Now, as they come on through, off camera, we can confirm that Jacob Wally has just passed Spencer Cockayne for P16 overall. That is before Cockayne has come into the pits. Wally has made a pit stop already, so that is going to be a certain track position gain for Wally. And as they make the way all around it, we continue to focus on this battle for P4, and we ride on board and look back from the rear of Michael Cochrane's Elantra as they make the way up towards turn number 2. Now, heading up the hill here, the gap opens up to a degree, but into the braking zone they go. No sound of a lift off there from Cochrane with regards to just coming off the throttle and letting the car roll into the corner. So Cochrane right now pushing it in terms of how much fuel he's using, trying to keep Shink at bay. Meanwhile, Shink's staying there, and to be fair, you can see the menacing face of that Veloster just staying ever close and ever present as they make the way down into Gusta corner at turn number 3. Now, as they make the way down, of course, last time out, it was Shink who was so close he came out this corner, but this time a little bit further back. So I wonder if Shink there also have a little bit of an off run with regards to coming over the apex of turn number 3, losing a bit of pace, but still I think Shink now just trying to get in the mind of Cochrane, trying to make him think, is Shink going to be coming at him from corner to corner? Is he backing off? And that's something you can do, of course, when it is a strategy race. You can really try to get in the head of the driver in front of you by staying as close as possible, looking to make a move, starting to put a little bit of pace down and back it off again, and the driver in front starts to have to balance the concept of thinking about their strategy as well as wondering what you're doing behind, and that distraction can lead to a sudden error. But Cochrane showing no signs of making an error right now as they come out of turn 8 and down towards 9. Nobody comes into the pits once again. They all stay as they were. And as they make the way on to another lap, we look up to the front of the field. Fastest lap of the race so far, set without a toe. It's a 39.64 or 638 to be precise by the Hassel's Motorsports driver of Micah Hendricks. And as they make the way on towards turn number 2, now I think he's been given the call. It's time to put some faster laps in. You can see, look at the gap. He's tried to creep open 6 times, albeit with the run on the straights in the Audi behind the Swirydowicz. That gap is not going to stay open for long. It'll be in the corners where that gap really starts to materialise. But meanwhile, in the battle for P4, we can see coming up to turn 2 this time, Shink with 1.5 tenths under braking, opens back up to a degree. Of course, that's the natural flow of the corner. But meanwhile, into the pits on the lead of the Delta class, albeit he's missed his pit box. He's got to reverse a long way back. It's the Not Last Motorsports driver, Kurt Smith, and that is a blunder that could be costly. As meanwhile, Justin Rhodes goes on to retake the lead of the Deltas, albeit he's still got to take a pit stop, of course. But has Kurt Smith blown his chances here? We'll have to wait and see. But I think Rhodes, he won't be aware of it. But when he comes out of the pits, he'll either be much closer to Smith, or alternatively, he may be alongside as they come on through and up towards turn number 2. Samuel Cran not too far back either, running P2 in class right now, yet to pit as he comes up into the right-hander at turn 2. And then we do have Eric Statzer as well there. That's your top 3 who've yet to pit in the Delta class, P10 through to P12 overall. And with Shepka behind P13, the Alpha driver here has already taken his pit stop, so he's out of sequence with the rest of the drivers in front of him, and we're expecting him to jump back up inside the top 10 in due course as more pit stops do transpire. But as he heads on through, and we do have confirmation of that retirement from John Lauzon, into the pits comes Jerome Bergula as he is the first of the battle drivers for P4 to come out of that battle and decide now it's about strategy rather than force on circuit, as he makes his way up towards his pit box very shortly. Now, has he called this right by going early? That's the big question. With regards to Cochrane, Shink and Actutella, they will all be gaining at time on one another with regards to running all the way on around circuit in the toe of one another as they make the way up towards turn number 2. But as they head in towards the braking zone, well, right now Cochrane definitely looking smooth here, looking absolutely flawless. But I wonder how much fuel he's having to use in order to keep this momentum to Shinkanachatella as they make the way in towards 3. But as they come on down, well, the leader's not too far away from that gap to the leaders. In fact, has stabilised to an extent to approximately 6.7 seconds. So the leaders now are being almost matched by the pace of the drivers in the group for P4 behind. And I think it is all signs that those pit stops are starting to rear their heads with regards to the need for fuel conservation and trying just to push the race out a little bit longer. The closest battles in circuit right now are the battles for P1 through to P3 and the battles for P4 through to P6. Everyone else mixed up with the strategies at this time, and we are expecting the whole field to start to make the way back together as time wears on. But still, we have got just over 20 minutes of racing left, and we are still waiting for the trigger to be pulled on the pit stops of the top 6 as they make the way towards the end of lap number 22. As they come on down this time, Hendricks here not showing any signs near Swirydowicz or McKinsey. Meanwhile, Cochrane comes on around. Will he pick his way into the pits? No, none of them do either. They're all continuing to go long. And the question is, where's Jerome Bajulaz come out in all of this? Well, he's come out in P9 behind David Bauer and James Carr, albeit both what is James Carr and Bauer have yet to pit. So therefore, he will, I think, feel that he's in good hands with regards to where he's filtered back out into the sequence. He's also come out ahead of Justin Rhodes and Samuel Cran, so he's not behind anybody who has already pitted, and therefore he's got plenty of space to play with on circuit. Of course, now for Bajulaz, every lap has got to be a qualifying lap or as close as possible to it, because of the way he's going to make the time on using the undercut, whereas everyone else around him is using the overcut. But meanwhile, into the pits comes Justin Rhodes, the breakfast for dinner drive from the lead of the Delta class, and now will the tables turn in the Delta race between him and Kurt Smith? Where is Smith, here you ask? Well, here he is making his way up towards turn number 8 in the charge. Meanwhile, Rhodes is into his pit box very shortly, and as they make them through, in fact, Rhodes has just entered his pit box, so Smith comes on through 8 down towards 9. It's going to be close here, as I believe Rhodes is almost finished being serviced, and we look to the blimp camera here. It's not going to be the best perspective, but Rhodes is making his way out of the pit lane now. In fact, he's almost coming to the pit limiter line. He's going to come across it. He's up to speed gradually as he comes through in towards the kink of 1, coming out of the pit lane, but there's Kurt Smith, and as they make the way up to speed now, it's going to be a drag race all the way up towards turn number 2, come roaring on through, but that mistake in the pit lane, look how much it's cost Kurt Smith. It has cost him the lead in the Delta class, and it has put him 2.5 tenths behind Justin Rhodes in the run to turn number 2, and now Smith needs to come back as soon as possible. Smith goes all in here. He goes as deep as possible on the brakes, but Justin Rhodes sees it's coming and picks his way back on the inside with the cutback. A nice return move there from Justin Rhodes, and to be fair to Kurt Smith, he's had to go for all of it he needs to get Justin Rhodes to battle with him. He can't afford just to sit behind Justin Rhodes, because given the relative pace based on before they came into the pits, Rhodes, if he's able to get the hammer down and get it done succinctly, he will gradually pull a couple of attempts away from Kurt Smith lap after lap. But right now Smith does not want that to happen as they make the way into turn number 5. Meanwhile, behind there you can see it is one of the Hassel's Motorsports cars. Daniel Smith a little bit further back out of sequence of this suspension of cocaine. Meanwhile, into the pit lane, but Justin Rhodes pushing on. In fact, that's Daniel Cedeno, who is a lap down P19 after the incident on the open lap. He's carrying on all the way to the end. That's what it's all about when you have a difficult day at the office. But right now we focus here on the Delta lead battle between Justin Rhodes and Kurt Smith. As they coming down through turn 8 and into 9, we ride on board the gearbox of the breakfast for dinner Elantra as it heads into turn number 9. And Smith then makes an error. He goes overly deep into the corner, and that opens up the gap massively in the run down towards turn number 1, and Kurt Smith has been cost very dear. It was a mistake in the pits when he missed his pit box by about 10 to 15 metres, and now it is the case that one mistake coming out of the final corner has cost him ever dearer, and now he'll pick up a distance half the back of Rhodes. But I think this may be the straw that breaks the proverbial camel's back when it comes to fighting with Rhodes, unless Rhodes makes an error which brings him back into contention. We'll have to wait and see, but that could be it. Meanwhile, there's still more coming as we see here Schink and also Achetella into the pit as they make the way onto the braking line to stop themselves before they hit the pit limiter line. And as they come in right now, which one's going to jump ahead? As meanwhile Michael Cochrane continues to go, much like our top 3 who've shown no signs of coming on in. And well, whilst this is happening, of course, what about Jerome Bajulaz? Because he was the first of the quartet in the battle for P4 to pit. He picks his way down through turn 8 and in towards 9. He goes very wide, however. Now going to his track limit bank account. And as he makes his way out to turn number 9, we look to the blimp camera here. And where are Francois Schink and also Achetella? Well, we can see that Schink is ahead of Achetella. And meanwhile, it's Bajulaz who comes on through. But he's going to be at the back of the group. He's nowhere near close enough. And well, now Francois Schink is safe. But Achetella may be at risk a little bit of being drawn back and embroiled in that battle, albeit when all is said and done, it actually looks as though the trio are separated by about 1.5 seconds between each car, and therefore Francois Schink right now has pulled this off perfectly. The only question for him is, can he find a way to jump Cochrane in the pits, or by going long, has Cochrane found a secret tactic? But meanwhile, we see here Samuel Cran continuing to run without pitting. He's P9, he's your Delta leader on circuit at the moment. albeit we believe he will have, well, he's got to definitely pit soon, and that will drop him back down to P3 in the Delta class, but he's running along here. He's gone a whole 41.5 minutes without refilling the tank. I think he could be in the end of this lap, because we do have our race leader in, that Micah Hendricks, but as he comes on in, Swirydowicz and McKinsey continue. Goodness me, well, I can tell you one thing, those fuel tanks were checked before they went racing today, so there's not extra fuel in these cars. They've just been saving so much fuel as they make the way around, and Hendricks has had to pull the trigger on his pit stop in his battle for the lead. Now, will it be Swirydowicz or McKinsey by going long who jumps Hendricks, or will Hendricks by going shorter than them, undercutting his two peers? Will he find a way to jump back ahead on the pit exit? That will be the challenge, as Cochrane's into the pits as well, and with Cochrane coming on in, James Carr goes long as well. Hendricks leaves the pit lane. Where is Francois Schenk? Well, here comes Francois Schenk. He makes his way across the timeline, but Cochrane's left his pit box, making his way up to speed, and as they come on through, we'll see Schenk coming on through turn number 1 very shortly. I think Cochrane has nailed this just about. It's going to be very close in the battle for P4 as they make the way out of turn number 1. And Cochrane returns ahead of Schenk, albeit only by a tenth, when they're both up to equal playing field as they make the way up towards turn number 2. Side by side they go, and Cochrane is going to have to try and outbrake Schenk in order to get this defended. He goes for it then. Schenk knows he's going to go for it. He looks for the cutback. At the same time, Cochrane then gets it stopped very nicely. And Schenk, I think, not being ruthless enough, it would seem, in terms of getting back on the inside. I think actually outstepping himself under braking. And now as they make the way down towards turn number 3 here, and Schenk making a tiny error in the relative scheme of things, but now he's got a battle around the outside of Cochrane into 3, goes to the cutback nice and early here, but Cochrane sees it coming, parks it on apex, and now Chitella's been brought right back into this, and 3 seconds back at closing gradually is Jerome Bajulaz. As they make the way on around and into turn number 5 at this point, Cochrane definitely making the pain felt, as meanwhile Justin Rhodes has made an error on circuit, and Kurt Smith is back up his inside in the run through turn number 2. So the battle for the Delta lead, as we understand it, is back on as they make the one through. Meanwhile, your race leaders are still out there on circuit. Swirydowicz and McKinsey have gone another lap. They're going 27 laps without pitting, and James Carr finally comes in from P3, but Rhodes holding off Smith for the time being, and well, that's definitely going to be up in terms of the anti-zone, as meanwhile Cochrane here comes on through to retake P4 for James Carr, who's in the pit lane, but more importantly for him, he still holds off the charge of Schenk and also Achitella, but for how long can he do so, as it looks like there's been a mistake for Bajulaz that's dropped him a bit further back. He was 3 seconds off this group, and now he's dropped back to 4 seconds as they make the way onto another lap, and my goodness, right now Cochrane has got the unenviable task of trying to hold off 2 fast flying drivers, and Schenk is definitely looking for the mover. You can see, just look how much he's gluing himself to the back of that Elantra. He knows he needs every 0.1 of a mile an hour in the toe before he looks to the move, looks the outside. Cochrane defends the inside. They come on through, they give each other space, but Cochrane there with a little bit of power understeering, how to settle the car down, brings it back together, but in return Achitella looks left, he looks right, and as they make the way down towards turn number 3, he tries to look around the outside, and Samuel Cran's coming to the pits as well. He has come back out behind Willis Smith and Rhodes, albeit it is the case that Cran will be P3 in the Delta class, P13 overall. But meanwhile, into the pits, we must look to our leaders here. They finally come on in to prove to us they have not got unlimited fuel in the cars. And Swirydowicz comes on in with a flash of lights there for McKinsey, who's trying to distract his rival as they make the way on down. And as they head towards the braking zone, it could also be hazard lights to be fair, saves in the pit lane. But the 2 of them are heading into their pit boxes. Meanwhile, Achitella gets a good run, coming out 5, 6, and into 7 they go. The battle side by side here for P5. And it looks as though, in fact, Cochrane has been passed through turn 5 and being passed by Schenk now. The door is open for Achitella to look for the move, but meanwhile we have to cut to Swirydowicz and McKinsey, literally come out nose to tail. Where is Hendricks? He's dropped a long way back, and Hendricks is nowhere near close enough, but look at this! McKinsey literally comes out right on the rear of Swirydowicz, and they have both got a gap of at least 5 seconds over Hendricks by going so long and working together as they make the way out towards turn number 2 here. And right now it is McKinsey versus Swirydowicz for the win, with Hendricks dropping a long way off as they make the way into the final 14 minutes of this race. But for McKinsey now, the gloves do come off. It's all about going to the end. Now the question is, of course, did either of them underfuel to try and get the jump on the other and then have to rely on using the toe of the other driver for a brief while? Well, I think for the pair right now, it's all about just playing it 1 lap at a time, and they'll both be looking to be pinpoint precise with every corner, every braking zone, and every return to the power as they make the way through. Meanwhile, drama down the pit lane. We've had the retirement for Jerome Vajulas, as I'm to understand it, or at least he has had to be towed to the pits from circuit. And we've also had Daniel Sedano into the pit. We've had Spencer Cockayne as well retire. So we have had now a grand total of 6 retirees. As meanwhile, we look from the battle for the lead to the battle for P5. And here, Conrad Chitella has found his way past Cochrane as they made their way out of 3 and up into 5. And right now, the yellow flag motorsports driver absolutely flying high as he comes on through and returns to the top 5 after a while. As he makes his way out of turn number 7 and up towards 8, we have had clarification from Logan McKenzie in the YouTube chat to say that Hendricks missed his pit box and had to throw it in reverse, much like what we saw for Kurt Smith, and that explains it all with regards to Hendricks losing so much time, and therefore a small error in the pit lane that has cost Hendricks so dear in being in that three-way fight for the win at the very end. But still, there's plenty to play for as we see our battle for P4 head onto lap number 29. As they come on through, we look from them, of course, to the leaders as they make their way on towards this next lap, and the leaders already up to turn number 2. Such is their gap to the rest of the field as they come on through. And for Wojciech Swirydowicz right now, well, the Polishman here, of course, with so much graft having gone in, the Audi RS3 driver definitely has really managed this race well. But the only thing that is causing him to come unstuck in that regard is the fact there's an Elantra driver behind of Logan McKenzie who's managed it just as well, and right now it's really started to bear his fangs. The group ran together for so long as a trio, including Micah Hendricks as well. But in the end, Hendricks making the error in the pits. It's gone from 3 to 2. And who will be the one at the very end who takes that checkered flag? Well, based on the run of form right now, it is too hard to tell. You would argue, based on one lap pace, it would go the way of Swirydowicz, given the fact that he did take the pole position here. But in return, of course, we know the one thing that McKenzie has in his arsenal is he has so much race pace at his disposal. Qualifying, he's strong, but in the races, he goes deeper and deeper into the race. He just finds this way of bringing so much pace to bear, and right now it is all there. But as they make their way through the right hand out of turn number 9 and down towards 1 they go once again. You can see McKenzie flashing his lights. I think also trying to send the message to Sedano in the distance there, which is, look, there's 2 leaders coming through, not just one, as the blue flags wave for the Veloster driver who lets them go. And right now, Sedano respecting the blue flags comfortably. The Halves Motorsport driver in P16 currently picking up places with the retirements that keep on coming in. But meanwhile, we do look back to Francois Schink here in P4, who, after steering clear of Cochrane and Achatella for some time, has now been reeled back on in. Interesting enough, and that last lap from Schink is telling. It was a 40.26, Achatella a 39.72, and meanwhile James Carr a 39.83. And well, we can see there how Schink definitely doing everything right, but the lap time is falling away, it would seem. And I wonder whether those front tyres are now starting to squirm a little bit with regards to when he applies the power. They do not want to be as compliant. And meanwhile, behind him, Achatella and also what is Cochrane, both having nailed looking after those tyres a little bit more. Although, to be fair, if I'm saying that Cochrane's been able to nurse his tyres, given the amount of pressure he's been under, well, he must be the master of tyre saving. The Sergio Perez from Formula 1 of this grid. Of course, Sergio Perez, the Formula 1 driver from Mexico, known for his ability to make tyres last an eternity, and perhaps that is Cochrane's ultimate trait as he makes his way down for turn number 5 and into 6. But as they come roaring on down in towards 7 here very shortly. Right now, these 3 all stapled together, and meanwhile in the battle for the Delta lead and the final spot in the overall top 10, it is Justin Rhodes ahead of Kurt Smith, the Not Last Motorsports driver here, trying to get one over on the breakfast for dinner driver in the hunt to chase him down in the championship standings. Of course, they'll both be well clear of Eric Stats of P2 in the standings by comparison, with Smith P3, and well, with this result he would effectively jump ahead as we understand it, albeit without computing drop scores. He would jump ahead of Stats into P2 in the class. But as they make their way into turn number 5, still plenty to go as they come on through, and with it can Kurt Smith find a way to get under the skin of Rhodes in the final 9 minutes of racing, plus the final lap, of course. And as they come through, we do look back to the front of the field here, and Swirydowicz right now continuing to up the tempo, albeit not the fastest drivers on the circuit currently. That accolade goes to P6 drivers, just set a fastest lap of Michael Cochran with what is a 39.48, but at the same time, Swirydowicz setting his personal best on the previous lap of a 39.56. So everybody with less fuel in the car now also trying to get the most out of the car and also to set that fastest lap, which they all want to try and get, because it is a bonus point, and whilst it's only 1 point, you could say, well, 1 point could be the difference between you winning the championship at the end of the season and you being in second place. But as they come through, every point matters, and right now all the drivers definitely showing that every second matters as they head on through. But Cochran, the fastest man out there, as we ride on board with the privateer as he comes into turn number 5. Now coming down through the left hand, and we have heard that David Bauer has had a return of connection issues with only 9 minutes to go, and I think we could have a retirement for David Bauer right to the end, which means now everybody running outside of what is the top 6 will be given a place promotion, and that is very unfortunate, as Justin Rhodes on your time in town, you'll notice, has briefly had a disconnection, and surely it's not going to be breakfast for dinner, having multiple retirements right at the end. Well, not for Rhodes, but for Bauer, we have had confirmation it is a retirement, and therefore that's very unfortunate. Another engine has blown, and now we have only got running in this race 14, or in fact 15 drivers remaining out on circuit as they continue on here, and the stakes to continue to grow higher in terms of the risk of points being gained, as Cochran here stays close to the back of Achatella, but he just cannot find a way to stick a move on the inside at the moment. But at the same time, he may be waiting right for the end. He may be trying to give Achatella as many opportunities to try and get alongside Shink and make the two of them step wide, so Cochran can get a double move done for the price of one. But again, I think right now these three drivers all focusing on the driver in front of them, or in the case of Shink, focusing on the clear space in front of him and trying not to think about the two behind as they make their way in the run down the third straight up towards turn number 3. As they come roaring on down through, and we look to the exterior cameras, we do have that confirmation, as we said earlier, about David Bauer having the retirement, as Montana's now moves up to P14 on the time in town, and Daniel Cedeno in a lap's time will take the place of a Bauer as well. Very unfortunate for Bauer, given the good run he was only inside the top 10, but with drivers retiring, of course, all the opportunities do open up, and well, right now for Francois Shink, this is a huge opportunity here for him to get some major points coming away from Austria as he heads on through turn number 6. And going through the left into right here at 6 and 7, given the run of form he had at Donington, really bringing it together now as we're going to the second half of the season, and that's what we love to see for the Beaver Buds driver. Of course, one of those drivers who does normally run it very consistently over the course of the season. We saw that in season 5, but when he does have his blips, he does find a way to bounce back in the next round. But also what we have seen from Shink is that normally as we go deeper into the season, he really starts to come on strong. He just naturally starts to find more and more pace in each and every race. Meanwhile, Achatella and Cochran, to be fair, well, Achatella, of course, promoted to the Alpha class this season. He has really been mixed up in amongst the Alphas after being our Delta champion for season 5, and in Cochran, the unknown on his debut today, definitely it would seem enjoying the racing and sticking it to some of the very best out there as they make the way up towards turn at number 2. But meanwhile, we look to our P3 driver here of Hendricks, who has just set the fastest lap of the race, a 39.35, only 200ths faster than Swirydowicz, your leader, who just set the fastest lap before being demoted from that position by Hendricks. Swirydowicz personal best there, 39.37, and Shepka then P8 setting a 40.567, his personal best in the Honda. But everybody right now with low fuel, really now starting to get a feel for the car, albeit they'll had that feel for the car all the way through, but now really going for that bonus point, and also seeing just how much time they can yoink out on their rival. As meanwhile, the Hassel's Motorsports driver here, he is gaining very gradually on McKinsey and Swirydowicz, but it's only by hundredths a lap, and that goes to show you just how fast this top 2 are running, as we see Eric Statston on the left-hand side of your picture, respecting the blue flag, staying clear as they make their way past the Marshall's post and into turn number 8. Still 4.5 minutes remaining here, and as Miss Kitty Louise 90 says in the Twitch chat, and very true, this is why longer races are better. So much going on and anything can happen just when you think you've nailed it. Well, we're not going to disagree with you there in the fact that there's a turn at any moment here. We could have a spin in the tail all the way to the finish. It looks as though Swirydowicz has found a way to equal out and neutralise the pace of Logan McKinsey, but saying that, McKinsey has just gone even faster than everyone with a 39.34, but it's late drama as Michael Cochran comes comes into the pits. Now surely this is not for another pit stop. If anything, it's going to be for a drive-through for track limits and instant points accrued. But either way, it's a sad way to conclude his race. It is a drive-through penalty. He's hit the instant limit and that is going to cost him all the way down to P7 after working so hard and doing so well to run inside the top 5 all the way along. And now he will be able to see James Carr in front, but that is not going to be a major relief given the fact that he will want to do everything he can to bring down James Carr. But do keep in mind, of course, there's only 3 more instant points before he's potentially disqualified from the race. Therefore, for the American driver right now, I think it's all about just trying to bring it to the end. But meanwhile, Logan McKenzie with a 39.34. Right now, I thought only moments ago we said that Swirydowicz had neutralised the pace, and then suddenly McKenzie finds a way to completely make us mark our words, and I think he might be grinning ear to ear as he watches this back currently as we ride on board with the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver here. What can he do? He could get close, but can he find a way to upset the Audi and make sure that his straight line speed is not going to keep him at bay? As they come through turn number 9, they both run to the very edge of track limits, that they both are using as much space as possible in order to carry the lap. Swirydowicz fires back with 39.08. McKenzie of 39.1. These two are absolutely pushing the tempo. It's incredible. The tyres must be absolutely screaming right now, and they are still finding time on heavily worn front tyres to put in lap after lap. And well, it's like a qualifying session gone all the way up to 11 in terms of how they're pushing right now. But as they come into turn number 2, of course, pushing this hard, what it does mean is the likelihood of an error can come at any moment, because both drivers are running at 100%. They've been running at 100% ever since they left the pit lane, and you can't run at 100% forever. And whoever is going to make the mistake first, that could be all it takes, as there's only 2 laps to go, including the final lap we're on. As they make the way on through, Swirydowicz locks up the brake slightly but gets the car stopped. McKenzie has to respond by slowing down. And as they make the way through 4 and up into 5, the Audi driver right now started to feel the heat, as McKenzie really getting closer and closer. And as they come down towards turn number 6 at this time, elsewhere on circuit, the battle for P4 between Francois Schenk and Achatella. Iconic stabilised about 6.5 temps. And meanwhile, we can tell that Cochrane has not closed up to Carr, and Smith is not closing up to Rhodes at this time in the battle for the Delta win. So we will stay with our leaders as they make the way down the hill and towards the final lap. Will it be Wojciech Swirydowicz who leads it all the way to the end, or will Logan McKenzie find that last lap magic to turn the fortunes around? Will the white flag is out? They make the way across the line. It is lap 36, and as they come on through, it's one last roll of the dice for Logan McKenzie. He takes a look into turn number 1. He can't find it immediately. They come through turn number 1 and make the way on through. Swirydowicz goes a little bit deep there. McKenzie may have an offering as they make the way on up towards turn number 2. But if he's got one here, he's going to have to go from quite far back. It's 3 temps and closing very gradually by increment as they make the way up the hill. But I don't think he's going to find it here. It might be at turn number 3 instead as they come on through the right hand, rolling the way out. And as they come on down towards turn number 3, you can see there McKenzie gets a good run. He's within 2.5 temps, but he needs more than this because the Audi's just got so much speed. He gains a temp at long last. He's now within 1.5 temps. Swirydowicz covers off the inside road. McKenzie's made to go to the outside. Swirydowicz there puts it on apex. He stops it in time. McKenzie looks at the cutback, but he can't find it. All he finds is a face full of Audi. And as they make the way from 4 into 5, Swirydowicz has done the hard part, which is prevent the Elantra from jumping on the straights. Now it comes to the clever part. All he needs to do is now every apex and every throttle point from this point onwards, and he will have it all said and done. The hour strikes on the clock, and now as they come on through, the checker flag awaits them. But as they come out of 6 into 7, McKenzie there goes a little bit deep. Understeer creeps in, and it costs him a bit of time as he drops back to 3.5 temps. Two corners to go, and as they come down through the right hander, the privateer Swirydowicz holds on. He just needs one more corner hooked up at this point. Turn 9 awaits him, and as he comes on through, the checker flag will await him as well. He's faced the test. He's passed him with flying colours, and Wojciech Swirydowicz is your winner for the privateer outfit ahead of Logan McKenzie, P2. And what a race to the finish it was between the pair, and then it'll be Micah Hendricks who comes on home to complete the overall Alpha podium, P3. The Hassel's Motorsports driver doing everything right bar the pit stop. P4 it will be Francois Schenk ahead of Connor Achatella, and then P6 we will see very shortly. It will be James Carr for breakfast for dinner coming on through to just finish outside the top 5. And debutant in P7 there of Michael Cochrane. A mistake in the end cost him dear with a driving penalty, but still he'll learn from that and take a lot of pride from today. We then do have a sizable gap of 22 seconds to our next driver of Matthew Shepka, the Talksteer Racing driver, coming on down, as we have already had a couple of drivers who are lap down finish the race, including Eric Statzer in P13 and also Daniel Sedano, who's 2 laps down in P15. Matt Shepka comes to the line in P8 in the end, doing everything he could with the Honda, but I think he knew it was going to be a tough one today. And then it will be Justin Rhodes, who comes home P9 overall, your Delta class winner for breakfast for dinner, ahead of Kurt Smith, who gave it everything, but in the end the not last motorsport driver, he's definitely lived up to his name. He hasn't finished last, but a P2 in class, P10 overall, ahead of Samuel Cran, who just holding off Jacob Wally by looks of things all the way to line, a second between the two of them, and keeping in mind, of course, Wally having to pit very early, and therefore I think is running on fumes on the car. Meanwhile, Cran, the 666 driver, deciding to go so long, as they make the way out of the final corner, he will round off the Delta podium ahead of Wally, who comes across the line there in P12, and that will be all of your finishers on the lead lap, with Tyler Montanes there finishing P14, the last driver to finish the race, albeit a lap down, but what a thriller all the way to the end. And as we look to the two belligerents who battled all the way, Wojciech Swirydowicz takes the checkered flag, your winner today in the overall and the Alpha classes, and well, the Polishman there could not have been pushed more to the limit from start to finish as he comes into the pits. And Logan McKenzie, I think, will be saying to himself, if only I had one more lap. And well, the two of them there were absolutely faultless to every apex touched as they come into the pits. A thriller all the way to the end. And with the race results in, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at them. Of course, subject to any stewards' inquiries, but those stewards' inquiries have been completed, as we understand it as well. So after an hour of racing here today at what is, the Red Bull Ring circuit in round number 7 of the Alpha Touring Challenge Season 6, brought to you on iRacing. Wojciech Swirydowicz taking the win in the end by just shy of 0.4 of a second over the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver of Logan McKenzie, with Micah Hendricks completing the top 3 overall and also your Alpha podium for Halves Motorsports. Franz Washing in P4 there, the Beaver Buzz Energy driver, the driver who stood the test of the battle for P4 between himself, Connor Achitella, and also Michael Cochrane, and also a little bit earlier on at Jerome Bajulaz, albeit unfortunate circumstances for Cochrane and Bajulaz, and Achitella just not quite able to hold the pace of Shink, but what he was able to do was hold on to P5 for Yellow Flag Motorsports there in a great effort. And then James Carr P6 for breakfast for dinner ahead of Michael Cochrane, with that drive-through penalty at the very end being demoted out of the top 5. But as we said earlier, he'll definitely take a lot of inspiration from today, because a fantastic drive from Cochrane, and the privateer definitely making himself known in the Alpha class. Matt Shepka in P8 there, the Talksteer Racing driver, doing everything he could with the Honda today, but just not on the pace it would seem. And in P9, our Delta winner Justin Rhodes for breakfast for dinner, finishing just over a minute down on the overall winner, but at the same time 3 seconds clear of Kurt Smith in the end, the not last motorsports driver, completing the overall top 10 and bringing home that P2 on the Delta podium. Third place on the Delta podium, his first Delta podium of the season, Samuel Cran there, best rest in P11, the privateer, ahead of fellow privateer Jacob Wally there, missing out on being on the podium for the first time since he debuted in the Alpha Touring Challenge, and then Eric Statzer there completing the top 5 in the Delta class, albeit a difficult day for the Honda driver, finishing a lap down. The first time tries to finish lap down. Then Tyler Montanes on his debut, finishing in what was P6 in the Delta class, and a great performance in the privateer, and Daniel Sedano P15, albeit with that incident right at the start costing him dear, but recovering to P15 in the end for Halves Motorsports, 2 laps behind he finished, but still plenty of points on the board for him. And then at David Bauer P16, with the last of our retirees there for breakfast for dinner, 7 laps in the end, with Jerome Bajaj just retiring before him for Beaver Buzz Energy, 9 laps in the end. Spencer Cockane P18 with retirement 11 laps from the finish, and as we continue our way on down, Daniel Smith retirement 13 laps on the finish, P19. John Lauzon completing the top 20, albeit he will not be classified within the results, because I believe he did not complete 50% of the race lap distance covered. So the last driver who will receive points will be Daniel Smith, but John Lauzon classified there P20 for Beaver Buzz Energy, Michael McLeod P21 for Back of the Pack Racing, and Halves Motorsports P22, and that'll be Auguste Blondel there, who did not have more than what was in the end 8 laps under pace before it all went horribly wrong. But still, congratulations to all of our drivers all the way through and through. Fantastic racing from everybody. And well, with that, I hear you ask the big question now, which is how does that change up the championship standings? Well, as we head from trackside to the championship standings, we see here now with drop scores in effect, the championship standings have changed considerably. Now, Wojciech Swirydowicz is your championship leader after 7 rounds of 13 on 328 points with a 17-point advantage over Micah Hendricks there in P2, and James Carr stays in P3 on 293 points in a position whereby he only has a 5-point advantage over Logan McKinsey. Now, we do have to keep in mind, of course, that Logan McKinsey has a 3-point score in his drop score pocket, and therefore McKinsey right now, you could argue, is the danger man when drop scores apply, because he will have lost a lot of points compared to his peers, but he does have a lot of points he can potentially gain. Franz Washing on 277 points is only 11 behind the top 4, and then we have a sizable gap between the top 5 and the rest, with the best there of the rest grouped inside the top 10 being Robert Abrams, who is a further 64 points behind, 3 clear of Connor Achatella, with what is David Bauer in P8, and then Justin Rhodes, your Delta Championship leader, makes his way into the top 10 for the first time this season on what is 198 points, and his efforts continue to reward him, with Matthew Shepka there in P10 completing the overall top 10. We then look down to outside the top 10, 11th through to 20th, and best of the rest there in P11 is Jerome Bajulaz on 172 points, with the deltas of Kurt Smith, Eric Statzer, Jacob Welly and Adrian Fedorowski following suit. And you can see that the battle for P2 in the delta class now has gone the way of Kurt Smith for a time, only by 12 points, but Smith and Statzer both working against one another, but also looking to try and find that pace on the delta leader. And, well, will they be able to find a way to undermine Justin Rhodes' pace? Well, they've still got rounds to do so, but the amount of opportunities is gradually diminishing. Jacob Wally there, not picking up as many points as he would have liked to today, but on 100 now, and continue to get closer and closer to P2 and P3 in class, i.e. Smith and Statzer, with Adrian Fedorowski not in attendance today, holding on to P15, and it's James Logston, John Lauzon, Auguste Blondel, Dom Savio and Daniel Cedeno completing the run of the top 20, and outside the top 20, 21st through to 30th, we see Jason Landry, who wasn't here today, of course made his debut last time at Donington Park, stays P21, with Kirk Lane there, P22, 54 points, 4 clear of Charlie Pouillet, with Michael Cochran on his debut taking P24. There were 42 points to his name, ahead of Mark Darnell and Mark Senegal. Daniel Smith with a difficult one, only 35 points so far, and Samuel Cran there moves into P28, 2 points off of Smith, with Joseph Etzel and Tyler Montanez completing the top 30, and a good start to his season for Tyler Montanez, moving into the top 30 immediately. Outside the top 30, from 31st through to 40th, we do have Spencer Cockane there on at 20 points, albeit of a difficult race today, but still a couple of points gained. And then Sismon Bahujuk, who is in P32 at the moment, 1 point clear of Aaron Hall, with John Hinman, Alex Kotlowski, Tony Roma, Mark Crawford, Benjamin Harris, Michael Zepp, and Ian Mallett completing the run for 40th. And then outside the top 40, not to be forgotten about, we have from 41st through to 46th, James Vance, Gurkan Demir, Ryan Winfield, John Lynch, Stefan Chalafu, and Michael McLeod. And of course, with McLeod not being able to complete 50% of the race distance before retirement, that means he was not able to pick up any points today and stays, last but not least, on our standings chart. Now, that's the Drivers' Championship. Let's talk about the Teams Championship as well. And as we come to the teams standings, we can see here, bar a slight error with regards to the number of points stated against a team, they are as follows. And this is how they are currently in the standings, with drop scores coming into effect. Breakfast for Dinner leads the way on 802 points, clear of Yellow Flag Motorsports there by a margin of what is, unless my math is incorrect, by 128 points. And Yellow Flag Motorsports are gradually making ground. And they made major ground today with the results of Logan McKinsey and Connor Achatella, giving them a huge opportunity. And of course, that late retirement costing David Bowder and Breakfast for Dinner really have had the momentum cut away from them. Hassel's Motorsports also staying within touch of the top 2 on 546 points, but they continue to be chased gradually by Beaver Buzz Energy, who are on 468.5 points. And then we do have Torque Steer Racing completing the run of the top 5 there, with a clear gap of 240 points to QZ Motorsports, albeit, as you can see, with that 240 points, actually, I believe it should be a gap there of what's on the 136, and therefore that gap would be 214 points instead. QZ Motorsports, regardless, are in P6 ahead of Not Last Motorsports there, who are closing the gap to their P6 rivals. And then back of the pack Racing complete the run of the standings on P8 with 23 points. But with that, that's the standings covered, ladies and gentlemen. You've been brought up to date, and now it is time for us to say thank you very much for watching. And if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the Alpha Touring Challenge, the ATC, then why not check out firstly our website. That's alphatouringchange.wordpress.com, where you can find out all the latest information, news bulletins, upcoming and everything in between. Alternatively, if you want to go to the heart of the action and interact with the drivers themselves and the organisers, perhaps you're sat there right now in your chair thinking, I love touring car racing and I want to be on that grid for Season 7. Alternatively, I want to try out later on in Season 6. Well, don't be shy. Feel free to jump on the Discord and let yourself get heard and known today, because of course we're always looking for new members to join the grid in this absolutely fantastic series that continues to keep on giving. But now, ladies and gentlemen, our drivers will be packing up their bags and making their way from Austria to Germany for round number 8. Of course, the racing action will occur on what will be Monday the 16th of January, but we will be bringing it to you as if it were live on Friday the 20th of January 2023. And as we head into our fourth sprint race round of the season at the World Endurance Circuit Grand Prix variant of the Nürburgring, you can imagine it is going to be close, it's going to be tense, and it is a circuit which it has not been on the Alpha Touring Challenge calendar for a good number of seasons, but it is back in all its glory, and there's plenty of overtaking to be had, where it's in the Mercedes Arena, the run-through Vidal, or the Schumacher S. It's all about balancing it from corner to corner and carrying the speed, and who will be able to do it over the course of our 3 sprint races in the next round. We'll find out then, but until then, have a great weekend, stay well, stay safe, stay smiling, because we have been the Alpha Touring Challenge. I've been your host and commentator, Paul, TX1 for Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and most importantly, until next time, remember to stay on track. Good night.